All right, we should be live. Greetings and welcome to a very special episode of the Unnamed Bracketology Podcast. My name is Kerry Miller, joined as always by my good friend and co-host Graham Doran, and four of our friends. We're here for the mock committee doing the top 16 reveal. There's also a dog behind me, if you care about that. Maybe he's doing bracketology. We've got Dave Oman, mayor of Bracketville, two-time Bracket Matrix champion, I believe the only two-time champion, so we're glad to have him. We've got the one, the only, the piece of gold himself, Mr. Rocco Miller. You know him as Made for March on Twitter, where he wrote an entire freaking book yesterday about his current seed list. Anthony
Oh,
Valentino.
I made it through seven
Uh,
lines.
He's 7 lines, not the whole seed list. All right. Well, you got pretty
No.
far. Every time I refresh Twitter, it was there. And our newest member of the mock committee, MB Bracketology on Twitter, Matt Browning. And we've also got to shout out the godfather and brainchild of the mock committee, TK Brackets, Tim Kruger. You may have seen on Twitter today from basically everybody who covers the sport. They are doing the official mock in Indianapolis right now. Lunardi's there, and also a lot of people who've never done bracketology before. So they are learning the process. It's a fun thing. Tim and I did it in, I think, 2014, 2015, somewhere in that range. And even back then, he wanted to do a mock committee. Like we were stuck in the airport and just talking about how fun this would be. And then the pandemic happened and everybody learned Zoom. And then for 4 years, he ran the rink here and decided to step down this year. Though I have a sneaking suspicion he's going to want to get back in once we do the whole shebang in a couple of weeks. We'll see. But if you've watched in years past, you know we can talk for hours and hours and hours about this stuff. Our goal is to tighten it up a little bit this year while still respecting the process, having those spirited debates that you're here for, but hopefully cutting out some of the fluff. Two things we're doing differently. Number one, instead of listing the teams alphabetically on the board, they are presented in order of our consensus seed list. Now, my hope is that it doesn't end up that way. Um, we'll see how much things actually change, but it should definitely cut down on the amount of time spent trying to, just read through the alphabet and make sure you have everybody that you wanted in this certain spot on the seed list. So I think it'll speed things up. Number two is we're doing the voting all on a shared spreadsheet that each of the six of us have access to instead of our old system of, I mean, we've done Survey Monkeys. I think we try to do it over email. We've done it over text. It's always been clunky. It takes forever to tabulate. So this will be quicker. It does mean we can all see each other's votes, but I've kindly requested nobody try to game the system. And I have already said, if I think you're gaming the system, I'm going to call you out and force you to defend your ballot. So, thus concludes my intro. Let's dive straight into the debate du jour. I'm going to ask our newest member, Matt Browning, to kick us off on whether Connecticut, Houston, or Iowa State is most deserving of that final number one seed, because I think we are all in agreement. It is Michigan, it is Duke, it is Arizona, and then it is who knows. Matt, take us away.
I went back and forth on this for about an hour this morning before work because all three teams have a justifiable reason to be there, right? UConn has wins over Illinois, at Kansas, beat Florida. Houston's metrics are great. Iowa State's got wins over Kansas, Houston, and a big one at Purdue. So when these teams are so bunched together and they're elite teams, elite resumes, I try to find where's the chink in the armor. And for me, why I had Connecticut at 6 was because that quad 2 loss last night. And we talked about this before the recording. They were playing with fire for a while here. And it finally caught to them last night. So that's why I have UConn at 6. And then with Houston and Iowa State, I'm always hesitant to just go straight to head-to-head. I think it's one small piece to a large pie of a resume. So I looked at Houston's metrics, and that was the difference for me, putting Houston at 4 and Iowa State at 5.
Who is Rocco? You're the other one who has Houston at 4, I believe, correct?
That is correct, sir.
All right. Defend it, my friend, because we went two,
Yeah.
2-2. We got two people with Connecticut at 4, two with Houston, two with Iowa State.
Well, first of all, on the surface, it's obviously very tight if we can't have It's not as clear cut as Michigan, Duke, Arizona, obviously. I think when you look at these three teams in a body of work exercise, it's quite clear that UConn's got the best wins. They beat Florida, Illinois, and BYU on neutral courts. They have a road win at the Fog. Very, very impressive at the top of the resume. But they have to own that home loss at Creighton. That's the worst loss of anything the other two have done. You look at Iowa State, the season starts, they go to Purdue and they pop the Boilermakers in a big way. And that's still carrying the resume in a lot of ways for the Cyclones. They also have the win over St. John's out in Vegas. Two nice examples of getting away from Hilton Magic and proving themselves. They've also stumbled away from Hilton Magic. You know, they've gone to Cincinnati and TCU, and they were clearly the second best team on those 2 days. And so then you look at a team like Houston, who also went to Cincinnati and completely thoroughly dominated the Bearcats, like a lot of teams have this year. And Houston's losses are all very acceptable, very understandable, very competitive. However, Houston does not have the shiny big win like a win at Purdue or a win at Kansas, so that's what makes it debatable. And so, in my eyes, these three are fairly even. Houston does have 7 quad 1 wins. Iowa State does as well. I get Houston's only got 2 in quad 1A. And most of the time, when you're looking at resume and doing comparisons, you're looking for like you guys always say this about me, but yeah, the piece of gold or the platinum gold that you can hang your hat on. Houston doesn't have it yet. I'll be honest about that. But I also just think you have to use your eyes too. If any of these three are available to be selected, to me, I trust Houston. Well, on one side, I trust Houston more than the other two after watching them all year long. On the other side, if I'm an opponent, which team am I most scared of? It's definitely Houston. So it's Houston. And then obviously you have to do the last part of the process. We are still 3 weeks away from the season ending, and you project forward. Houston's playing Arizona this weekend. Figures to be a win without Arizona having Koa Pete. You also have other big games for Houston later. If they just continue to play at the level they are, they're going to be a 1 seed anyway. You might as well just share that with the public right now.
Oh, Rocco, I love your turns of phrase. I always do. We already got Mr. Skurs on Twitter said or on the chat said he gave up Twitter for Lent, so he's excited to catch a YouTube live stream. I love it. Let's go to the Iowa State supporters, which is still not me. I know for sure Graham is, because Graham is always supporting Iowa State more than I am. Mr. Podcast co-host, why don't you go to bat for the Cyclones?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, to the point, we wouldn't be debating like this unless this one was really close. I agree. Houston is probably the best team of these three, and I think that shines. But when I look at Houston, at what Matt said, right? I'm looking for the one thing that can kind of separate these teams. And as Rocco mentioned, they don't have the big win. At BYU, Provo, very nice win. They beat Arkansas, Newark. They beat Texas Tech at home in Houston. So I see very nice wins, but it's possible they don't have a win against a protected seed. We don't know, but it's very well maybe that they don't have a win against one of the teams we'll put on the top 4 lines tonight. And so that really stood out for me with Houston is they just don't quite have the big win compared to some of these other teams. UConn's wins, obviously, absolutely fantastic. Obviously, the Creighton loss stands out a little bit, but also something that stood out a little bit for me with UConn was just the way that they haven't won convincingly throughout Big East play. There's been multiple times they've gone to overtime. There's been multiple times they've made late comebacks. When I thought about the idea of who is a 1 seed, everybody would want UConn to be their 1 seed. I don't know that people would really want so badly to avoid Iowa State and Houston compared to some of the other 1 seeds, but they fit in a little bit better. So I think that for me separated UConn onto the 5 spot. And Iowa State, I don't think they're the best team. I think that's Houston. I don't think they have the best wins. I think that's UConn. But what team meshes together? Efficiency, quality, and the big wins. Rocco mentioned it. They went to Purdue, got that big win, obviously have the head-to-head win against Houston, beat Kansas by 18. I think when you combine all of those things, Iowa State's the one that doesn't have the warts in quite the same way that UConn and Houston do.
They mesh and they don't have warts. I love it. You're making a run at Rocco here with some of your terminology. Who's the other one with Iowa State at 4. I think it's Dave, correct? You want to go to bat for the Cyclones? Oh, Dave, you're on mute.
All right,
There we
can
go.
everyone hear me now? I mean, I think to back up a little bit of what Graham said, to me, with Connecticut's loss to Creighton, particularly at home, and just the overall predictive metrics that have been dropping a little bit for UConn because they have not dominated the Big East like we thought they were going to, I think drops them behind the other two right now for me, despite that really strong non-conference. They just haven't carried that over. But they're all three really close. And, you're not, like everybody else said, we wouldn't be having this debate if it were obvious. So UConn had the best non-conference season. They've only lost a couple times, but that loss kind of sticks out, particularly right now because Creighton's not a tournament team and probably will not end up making a big enough of a run to get back in the picture. So then it comes down to me as you look at, Houston and Iowa State. And I go back to the same thing that Graham did. I don't like the fact that they lost at Cincinnati. And, Iowa State has had a couple of games where they haven't looked great. But Houston doesn't have anything near a road win at Purdue in a dominant fashion. They also, Iowa State has the win over Kansas. And then, if you're looking at the very top of the field, the top of quadrant 1, they're 4-1. Houston is, I believe, 2-3. So, and then the final caveat to it is they played in Ames the other night. Houston probably should have won that game, had a significant lead in that game late, and let it get away. Houston had their chance to state their case. I had them all set to go as a clear number 4. And then Iowa State, which was right behind them on the seed list, took it. And so they went ahead, one spot ahead, and that's how I ended up at 4, 5, and 6.
All right, and the Connecticut contingent has to go now. I'm going to get a question from the chat. Alex Berngard 3465 asks, could an Iowa State Houston Big 12 tournament final be the tiebreaker? I mean, sure. And we're not trying to project what it actually will be on Selection Sunday. We're trying to project what the committee's going to say on Saturday. And to the point that everybody's made thus far, and I will be one of the Connecticut supporters, like, I don't think any way that it actually comes out on Saturday is going to give us like any definitive answer for what the committee feels about, what's more important this year. I guess maybe if Houston is at number 4 overall, that maybe leans towards a little bit more importance on the eye test, because what everybody else has said, Houston's 2-3 against Quad 1A, and both UConn and Iowa State, I think they're combined 8-3. I think those upper echelon wins for me, for Connecticut, they've got the better non-conference strength of schedule by a mile. I think both Houston and Iowa State are in the 100s, somewhere in that range, and Connecticut's top 10. I absolutely hear the arguments that they have not looked good in 2 months. I agree. They barely beat Georgetown twice. They barely beat Providence twice. They still have the best wins above bubble of the group, and that ended up being the tiebreaker for me because the committee is clearly in love with their new metric. And then Anthony, you are our other UConn supporter. I know you don't actually love UConn or anything, but you want to make your case for them as the final number 1 seed.
Yeah, I mean, you guys hit on the kind of the key points. I think we're splitting hairs here between these three at this point. And I think, Carrie, you mentioned too, I don't know how much we're really going to today, no matter what order these three are in, unfortunately. For me, it is Iowa State has the best win of those 3 teams. UConn has the best collection of wins, and it's not even particularly close. Houston, obviously, you get the metric profile, which has helped Houston a lot in the past. In previous years, they've really leaned into that, especially when they were in the American still, and they were racking up victories. Obviously, in the Big 12, it's a little bit different because they get those shots every other night as opposed to once in a long while. I put UConn at 4. I feel very good about having them at 4. I do not think they end up at number 4 when push comes to shove come Selection Sunday. I think they have to probably win out at least to the Big East final, potentially. to stay there, just with what those other two teams have ahead of them. But they have the best collection of wins. If we're looking at who did you beat and where did you beat them, as simple as that, you have to give it to UConn. And to your point, the WAB number backs that up a little bit. The non-conference strength of schedule, if you really want to reward them, similar to what they did to North Carolina last year and Memphis last year, and some of these things where things are, where you could just, it stands out compared to the other two. That's the main reason I went for the Huskies, those kind of couple things. But the overall body of work to me still says that they're there, even with last night. And one thing I think we didn't mention too, they do have that loss to, I mentioned this to Graham earlier today, they do have that loss to Arizona. I don't know how much is going to factor in, but they were minus Terrace Reed and minus Braylon Mullins in that game, and they lost by 4 points to another number one seed. Granted, it was at home, I understand that. But again, we talk about the injuries all the time. How much will they actually matter? I would be shocked if that game doesn't get mentioned when that game is being discussed, and that doesn't weigh a little bit in somebody's mind. So I like the Huskies here, but I think everybody made really good points that this could be any of these three.
All right, now that everybody has had some FaceTime, I'm going to share a spreadsheet here, as I always do. There we go. Should be good. I didn't put strength of schedule on here. I don't know why. Just kind of ran out of time. I will add, in my defense of Connecticut, there is always that one top 16 team that loses on Wednesday before the reveal, and it's as if the committee didn't care that it happened. I would assume they met Tuesday and Wednesday, and as well on Thursday. So I'm sure on Thursday they got together. They had already had Connecticut at 4 overall, and there was probably a motion of, do we drop them? Like, we kind of like them where they are. And that's kind of how I landed on Connecticut, in addition to their wins above bubble. But right here is the current vote that we're going to do. Does anybody object? Should we just go straight to a vote? I think we've all made our piece on 4, 5, and 6. Do the ayes have it? All right. So everybody put your vote into the spreadsheet that we have shared. I'm going to see if there's anything in the chat. Roman Runs 04 said, aren't conference tournaments not really considered? Boy, they're making a push during this mock committee with the Norlander and Goodman and everybody to say that everything up until Sunday does count. It matters. Of course they're going to say that. Why else would they play the games if they're going to, say they don't count? But history has shown that sometime on Thursday of championship week, the results kind of stop mattering. And especially on Sunday, they don't really matter. I do think if it comes down to, Iowa State versus Houston, truly for the final 1 seed, and they're playing in a championship game on Saturday, sure, that could be the tiebreaker. They might move that. It's an easy enough swap. They both prefer, the same region. I guess Houston would prefer Oklahoma City and Iowa State would prefer St. Louis, but it's not going to make a huge difference there. It's easy enough for them to swap it. So I think that would play into the factor there. I should probably submit my own vote at some point here to really lock us in. Graham, you're the only person that's not muted. Why don't you say something for us while I fill out my ballot?
I was just going to follow up. I think it was 2018, if I can remember off the top of my head. I think it was 2018 or 2019. Duke went on an absolute tear in the ACC tournament. Ended up beating North Carolina, Virginia. Maybe it was 2018 because of those teams, like one of those. And they ended up not getting a 1 seed. And that was really like the last straw for me. If that Duke team, who I think ended up with like 18 quad 1 wins or something absolutely ridiculous, they didn't get a 1 seed, that was kind of like, okay, I guess they're calling it quits at some point, because that team's done everything you could possibly ask to get on the 1 line at this point.
All right. So the votes are in. God bless us. This is already so much faster than every other year. And it is Iowa State by the slimmest of margins, 29, 30, 31 overall points. But I will update the spreadsheet here. And then we will.
KPI, they're actually, those 3 teams are separated by 7 1,000ths in KPI. UConn, Iowa State, and Houston. So maybe the computers also think they're pretty much the same team.
I don't think I've ever actually looked at like the KPI rating. Like you and I have been kind of obsessed with actual WOB rating this year and digging into that, but I've never gotten into the KPI side of things.
That's your slugging percentage. Teams that do really well in KPI tend to beat really good teams, and they often tend to do it by big margins.
The OPS, if you will.
K-
All right. So
KPI is beloved by the College Baseball Committee, I might add. I learned that
Is
last
it?
year. Yes. Side note there.
What I would say, and I was talking to someone today, to Rocco's point, it will not surprise me at all if Houston ends up on the one line 3 weeks from now. But we're
Yeah,
talking about
I mean,
how
they're
I
gonna
felt
be-
about it tonight
gonna-
based on where we are right now.
Yep.
And I think that's why I gave Iowa State the nod. I just saw it.
I think by Sunday morning, it'll be clear to everybody. But that's neither here nor there. The exercise is the exercise. Basketball's fascinating because we're always doing snapshots in time. But I mean, besides I hate to bring up the 2020 season, but if that happens again, we're not getting a tournament anyway. So we know what games they still have to play. In my opinion, and it might be edgy, it's not a bad thing to look ahead a little bit, and Houston's got the path. There's no question.
Yeah, Houston's going to
All right.
decide it one way or the other in the next week or so.
yeah, in the next, they're going to come out and be 5 or 6 overall, and then they're going to beat Arizona and Kansas in succession and just give a middle finger to the committee for putting them not on the one line.
Yeah, we're pretty lucky to even have this opportunity to have a debate, because if the games were scheduled differently, it might have just stayed a clear 4 every time we get a chance to do the exercise. So thanks to the schedule gods that we got a chance to do this.
All right, so we will now be picking from, we've got a whole list here. The ones highlighted over here in these columns, BYU, Louisville, NC State, Villanova, and Iowa. I just put them on there just in case. Everybody up until North Carolina, we had 21 that were in all 6 of our top 24s. So those are really the 21 we're considering. If anybody feels the spirit moving them to discuss any of these 5 when we get a little bit further into the process, by all means, but none of us actually had any of them in the top 20, so I don't know how we would end up with them in our consensus top 16. But the next step will be to pick 8 of these teams to then discuss who should be, we'll then rank them, and the top 4 from that will join the 4 leftovers from that last vote, and then we will decide the 2 seed line. So let's throw it to, I'm going to say Dave. Is there anybody in this list that you want to specifically call out, discuss their resume? As previously mentioned, these are already listed in left to right order. That was our consensus seed beforehand. So in theory, Kansas should be number 9 overall. We'll see if they actually end up there, but Dave, go for it.
Well, in the vein of Rocco talking about a little bit projecting forward, I'm going to throw Florida out there because I think you could make a strong case right now that Florida could end up being on the back end of the 2 line as the final 2 seed. I don't know that full comparison right now that the edge might still not be to Purdue in that spot, but the way Florida has played since the start of the year, I believe 15 of 16 or something in that neighborhood off the top of my head, and how they're playing, their predictives are on the rise. Again, we're going to find out if the committee's still really focused more on the WOB and the SOAR along with the net, then I think, it's probably clear that Florida is, somewhere in the middle of the 3 line. But I would be kind of curious to get other people's thoughts because, Florida has really, I'm not sure there's too many people that want to go play Florida right now or have them in their bracket coming down the stretch either. I don't know, too, because we're not to the finish line. Does the committee give any caveat to the fact that Florida is 11-2 and winning the SEC right now, and would be favored, I think, in most of the rest of their games to finish that out and go something like, something crazy like 16-2 or something in the SEC. What Florida is missing, of course, they struck out on their three biggest chances in the non-conference, although they lost by a point at Duke, close to Arizona on a neutral court, and then they lost that close game to Connecticut on a neutral court. So, I think Florida of a month ago, not there, but I would be curious to get other people at 8 quadrant one wins and just how they've dominated the conference. I would think that they at least ought to be in considerate for that spot potentially as the 8 overall at the bottom end of the 2 line.
I think what concerns me about Florida, and concerns a strong word, where maybe I wouldn't put them quite there in the 2 line yet, is the lack of elite wins and the lack of chances going forward for elite wins. Whereas a team like Illinois or Kansas has those opportunities. Kansas has Houston at home, at Arizona. That's why I'm not so sure. I hear your point, and metrically, that your argument, Dave, is supported by the high metrics of Florida. I don't know if I can quite get in there yet, but I'll tell you this, though, and we talked about this with the podcast a couple weeks ago. That is a team you do not want to see in your bracket, though, come Selection Sunday.
Yeah. I'll comment on Florida real quick. I saw in the mock committee that's going on in Indianapolis, they originally had Florida at 8 overall, and I can almost hear Joe Lunardi saying, guys, you got to reevaluate. It's not how good they are. You got to look at their resume. And I think it will be interesting to see, like, Florida versus Virginia on Saturday is what I'm most curious about. You put those teams on a neutral court right now, Florida's a 7.5 point favorite, probably, maybe even more. But I think they should be pretty close together in the actual seeding. I mean, if Florida is 8 overall and Virginia is 16 overall, I think that tells us this committee is leaning much more heavily on the predictive metrics and the eye test and all that. But historically speaking, and I think all of us, I think one of us might have had Florida at 8, but most of us had them at 10 or 11. Pretty much everybody has Virginia, like maybe top 4 seed, somewhere in that range. Like that's what these resumes should be. And that's what's fun about this top 16 reveal is, enough of the committee members change that you don't know what's going to be that emphasis. Like last year, it was the wins above bubble. It could be a little bit different this year. Graham, do you want to say anything on Florida?
Yeah, I do, because I think Florida's the best team here. Every team we're looking at, I don't think any of us would disagree Florida's the best team. But it's so convenient that you just listed them right next to Nebraska and Kansas, and you can literally look. Kansas has a better best win. They have a better second best win. They have a better third best win, a better fourth best win, a better fifth best win, and all their losses are better. Like, you put those side by side, it honestly doesn't even seem like a question to me, seeing those next to each other. So if I can't put them above Kansas, I can't put them on the 2 line.
Well, the only thing I would say to that is, if you look at the numbers, Florida, yes. But last I checked, Kansas lost to West Virginia, who's not anywhere near the tournament. And all of Florida's losses, depending on where you have TCU, are in Missouri after their win last night. If you didn't have them in, they're probably back in. They've lost to everybody. That's every team that they've lost to would maybe Auburn's on their way out now, at 14 and 12.
And it's a home loss, but yeah.
But I mean, that would be my point. I think a couple of their losses look worse maybe than they are. And that's not to say you're 100% right. What Florida lacks, they do not have, other than the win at Vanderbilt. They don't have what you might consider an elite level win, depending on how you evaluate Vanderbilt. They don't have the Duke win, the Arizona win, or the Connecticut win. So you're 100% right. And I think that's why they could very well end up on the 3 line. But I was curious to get everybody else's thoughts on that, just on how dominant they have been since at least mid-January.
Yeah, if you look at Torvik ratings since, I think, mid-December, like after their 5-4 start, they're the 3rd best team in the country. Like, eye test, absolutely. I mean, they should be a borderline 1 seed the way they've been playing lately. But I think that the like I said, I could hear Lunardi in my head telling them, guys, we got to scrub them down. They're not going to be there.
I was
Well,
going to
yeah, I
say,
think.
Carrie, go ahead, Rocco.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I think we're overcomplicating it a little bit. I think the easiest way to explain it is right now we just voted Purdue as our last 8 seed. We preliminarily voted Kansas as the 9 and Florida 10 or 11, whatever it was. And the reality is this whole exercise essentially is just a comparison of teams. And the wins that Purdue has got on the road is insane. There's just no way you can go pound for pound and put Florida above Purdue. And so that immediately says they're capped as a 3 seed, no matter where you put them 9 through 12. And Kansas, you got a little bit more of an interesting situation, as you've mentioned, the West Virginia home loss, all the Darren Peterson action, but they've beat Arizona without Peterson. They beat Tennessee without Peterson. So they're pretty darn good too. And if you just go resume for resume, as Graham said, you would have to lean Kansas at this very juncture. But obviously, the way Florida's playing, the way they're trending, and with all the Big 12, there's so much carnage going on with those teams. The power conferences this year, I think it's important for everybody to realize, they backloaded the schedules for everybody. So the Big 12 biggest matchups, we still have a bunch to go. The SEC's biggest matchups, the Big Ten's biggest matchups. A lot of these leagues backloaded the schedules. So teams have to lose those games. If Florida just keeps winning, they're going to end up at 2. But they're just not there now because as you go pound for pound with the comparisons, they're not quite there. But for me, Nebraska's a great story. But they've played, these 4 losses they took were probably their 4 hardest games, or 4 of their hardest games, minus the road win at Illinois. I just think Florida's dangers factor and the fact that they've been able to, just win much more consistently. I put Florida above Nebraska, but again, you could make an argument for Nebraska there, and I think they're both kind of squeezed into that middle of the 3 seed right now.
Yeah, to that point, I think Kansas, Florida, Nebraska, Gonzaga, that order seems really good to me.
Yeah, I'm not sold on Gonzaga yet, even though I'm the West Coast Conference representative, Graham. But I'm looking forward to that conversation. We lost our host, so
Oh
go
yeah,
ahead, Graham.
Carrie left. I was just going to add real quick. I think Rocco, you hit the nail on the head. I cannot get Florida past Kansas, and to that point past Purdue either. And that's just what it comes down to at this point. But I am curious, and I was thinking about this earlier, if they are in front of either of those teams, that does tell us a lot about where the committee's at. And I think one thing to keep in mind too is, the challenging part about that is if they do happen to be ahead, we can obviously read that they're taking the eye test and the predictives a little more seriously at that juncture. But that doesn't mean that later on, when they have a very similar situation further down the bracket, they're not going to revert back and say, well, this team's quality wins look a lot better, because we know historically, it's pretty inconsistently applied up and down the bracket. It is kind of almost a feel thing at that point. Especially when you start to get towards the bubble, you can make a comparison and say, well, this team's got better predictives, but they just happen to latch on to, well, they got one, this other team has one really good win, when that wasn't enough for Kansas versus Florida. So I like where the Gators are at now. I actually have Nebraska slightly ahead too. But I see the argument for putting Florida ahead.
Sorry, I had to run. My doorbell rang twice. AT&T is trying to sell us something. I said, no, with Verizon. So where are we at? Are we ready to
New sponsor.
pick
Thanks,
our
Greg.
new sponsor? Yeah. Sponsored by Guinness. We ready to vote on these? Pick 8, and then we'll then rank those 8 teams once we have a consensus on that. Or are there any other teams in this section we need to discuss? I'm going to take that silence as we're ready to vote. All right, so let's throw some vote on that second section. You'll just X any team that you want. Pick 8 of them, please. I probably should have put a number at the bottom as well, not just on the right, but pick your 8. Let's see what we got in the chat. Bryce Rohrig, 8806. Nordlander just reported that Michigan has told the NCAA that Philly is their preferred site for first and second round games. Interesting.
Hmm.
I've had them at Buffalo all along. So something to
More-
keep in mind that might could screw over Connecticut if they drop far enough because they would prefer Philly. But I don't know who else would want that.
More alumni.
More alumni. Joe Lunardi said whoever wins the Big 12 regular season will be his final 1 seed, so Kansas could even play themselves up there. I could see that, but that seems a bit aggressive.
Well, the one thing you have to keep in mind is Kansas isn't winning the Big 12 unless they beat Houston and maybe even sweep Arizona. So, like, there's really no path if they lose to Houston because Houston winning that road game would basically make the margin too big for Kansas to overcome. So, they like necessarily have to beat literally every good team in the Big 12.
All right. Brian-OU1NJ. I don't even know why I bother reading these. Did the media have Auburn in today? I didn't notice. I assume they did. I know they got to a point where they just like threw a bunch of teams in and they were like just debating like 9 teams for the last 4 spots. And I don't think I saw Auburn
I
on
think
that list. So I
was
think they were
Auburn
probably in.
above was Auburn above that though? I read it as Auburn might have been above that list, strangely enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they were clear of that, I think. So I'm pretty
Oh,
sure they
okay.
had them in.
Yeah,
I
that's what
could
I
be
was
wrong though.
thinking.
Same guy specifically asked Rocco if Auburn goes 4-1 in their last 5, do they get in? They'd be 18-13 and 9-9 with some really good wins. I mean, I think so. 4-1, they're in.
Yes.
Yeah, based on Texas getting in last year, I have to be
Yeah.
a little more lenient with these SEC bubble teams. I don't necessarily agree with it. I wish I was a real voter and I could go to town. But honestly, 11 of the 12 losses are tournament level. Last night's loss was the first one non-tournament level, and it's the best strength of schedule in the country, pound for pound. So they're going to get a lot of lenience. They also have the road win at Florida, only team to win in the swamp all year. They have a lot of good things going for them. It reminds me of the 17 and 15 Vanderbilt team of about whatever it was 8 years ago. And so if they could get to the finish line, at least they have to get at least 2 games over 500. Obviously, 4-1 gets them there. So yes,
Yeah, you got that Vandy team in 2016, the Alabama
there it
team
is.
in Georgia when they went 16 and 14. It's always the SEC teams every time.
Well,
Vandy,
Alabama,
Vandy
the
was 3
Alabama
games above,
team,
right?
Correct me if I'm wrong though. The teams if they were, I said this today, if you get to 15 losses though, that
Yeah.
it gets real rare to get in at 15.
there's only
So
4.
I
There's only
believe
4 that
I
have
believe
done it.
Vanderbilt got in, but they were 19 and 15 by the time
Yeah.
they won a couple of
They won.
games in the tournament.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So like I said, I don't think you're going to get in at 17 and 15.
Maybe. But
Yeah.
they
I mean,
might
possible
because
with the number 1 strength of schedule, maybe.
and the road win at Florida.
But
So
that's
that-
assuming that St.
but-
Louis doesn't lose the A10
and all that stuff. Yeah.
and all that stuff. Yeah, because you start losing spots, and which is probably going to happen. But yeah, I think if they go 4-1, Auburn's will be in a
They'll
pretty
be
good
fine.
spot.
They'll be fine, I think, if they go 4-1. I think with the road win at Florida, that's really important. Really important. It used to be, well, after Texas last year, I'm throwing my arms in the air on a lot of that stuff. I had to literally change my process because of that. There was no precedent for Texas last year. I'm sure we'll be talking about that a lot the next 3 weeks.
All right, we have our 8. So we will be ranking of these 8 teams: Kansas, Florida, Nebraska, Gonzaga, Virginia, Michigan State, Texas Tech, and Alabama. I mean, you don't have to rank them right now. I'm just telling you who they are. I don't know if during my run down 4 flights of stairs, I missed any talk on Texas Tech or Alabama, but I think they are 2 very interesting teams to see what the committee does with them on Saturday. Obviously, the Charles Bediako situation. I think if Bama's resume is just evaluated as it is, I would be surprised if they're not top 16. So if they're not in there, I think the committee is telling us that they are discounting those wins over Auburn and Texas A&M, which were close games in which Bediako played like 20 minutes apiece. And then the Texas Tech situation with JT Toppin, I did see that the media mock committee, they didn't even have Texas Tech in the top 20. I don't know what the hell that was about. There is no case for that unless you were just really pre-penalizing them and assuming they're going to fall apart down the stretch. Obviously, we had them in our consensus top 16, and we're talking about them here. There are 13 losses in this entire season by the top 5 teams on KenPom. Texas Tech delivered 3 of those 13 losses. I don't know how that's not a top 16, top 20 team. So, anybody else in this range that anybody feels like calling out as a discussion? I'm not intentionally highlighting Gonzaga and Virginia, but have at it.
Well, I did want to follow up on your comment about Charles Bediako. Alabama popped Illinois and Chicago without him. They went up to St. John's and put up 103 without him. They just beat Arkansas without him. Let's not act like they haven't been putting up big wins without Charles Bediako. I think they've done enough to merit serious consideration for a protected seed, regardless of his status.
No question.
Yeah, I
And
agree. That's why I'm saying if
it's
they're
more about
not
these-
on there, it'd be shocking.
It's more about these bubble teams trying to use it as an excuse to get another mulligan.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
I mean, he played in 5 games. 2 of them were losses. One was a win that he could have had no legs and they would have still won. They blew out Missouri. I mean, there were 2 results in question, which we already mentioned, which were Auburn and A&M. He didn't play particularly well in either of them. And I don't see how you can sit there and discount those. I almost feel like it would be more fair if the committee said, well, we're going to give maybe Auburn and A&M credit for that, but not discount Alabama. Again, that's sort of a ridiculous train of thought too, but docking Alabama for that to the point of what Graham just mentioned, that they've done so much without him, and not to mention have played an absurdly difficult schedule the whole entire season. I would be floored if they are not in the top 16 tomorrow. And to your point, Carrie, if they aren't, clearly something went awry with that discussion around Bediako, but push comes to shove, their resume stands on its own even without those 2 wins in question, candidly. Like I just can't see that being a factor, a major factor at this point.
Yeah, he was just a depth piece for them. He wasn't that important. I think he scored like a combined 17 points in those 2 games. He didn't answer the hypothetical of if Gilgeous-Alexander played for Valparaiso, would they win a national championship? He was just a guy that they needed to survive minutes-wise, but I think he was important to them in that regard.
The conversation around it is so silly because it's almost like acting as if Alabama brought in JT Toppin for 5 games and then now he's gone. The guy, I mean, he was pretty ineffective for the most part. Yes, he gave them some depth, but like this team has done so much without him. I find the discourse on Bama with that kind of silly. I don't like that he was necessarily able to come play. I think that whole thing is crazy, but that's not what we're talking about. But from a resume standpoint, I think the discourse is silly.
Yeah, the whole thing was insane, and like their fans like cheering for him as if he was coming back from Hodgkin's lymphoma or something. Like, oh, our hero is back. Oh, it was ridiculous. Us against the world mentality. But yeah, if they're not top 16, and in theory we have them right here at 16, I think that speaks volumes to maybe conspiracy theory, and conspiracy theory got me to having North Carolina in last year. Maybe there's just a mandate from the NCAA to discount those wins. I don't know.
I want to jump in about Texas Tech real fast. I have to see it to believe it going forward. That's why I docked them so much in my voting process. And my personal top 16, they're not there. I think he makes such a huge impact, JT Toppin, that is. I got to see it. Now, if the wins are there previously, if they go forward and they play well and they collect more wins, then I will gladly move them back up. But I have to see it first, especially after how things ended a couple nights ago against Arizona State. I need to see it to believe it. And once I do, if it happens, then I'll reward them again. I know I'm the lone person on that island right now. That's kind of where I stand.
Yeah, I have trouble with that, Matt. I think to me, it's the other way around. They've done what they've done. We obviously know most likely that they're going to struggle a lot more than they've been without them. Do I think they beat Duke without him? No. Do we think they get some of these wins? Probably not. But they still have, if we include the first round of the Big 12 tournament, they still have 6 games left. I believe they have to go to Ames and Provo still. They still have some really tough games on the schedule. Some games that are really tough. They've got some home games against the lower end of the Big 12 that's not so tough. And then they probably got something in the middle, which is the first round of the Big 12 tournament. And there's plenty of runway here for us to see what will happen without him. But I just don't understand the dropping them out of, I think they weren't even on the 5 line in the media
Right.
one, which again is a whole separate thing. But if you want to penalize them and drop them down the 4 seed and put them at the back end of the 4, I can see that a little bit. But I don't know. The resume in front of us is the resume in front of us. Snapshot in time. Yes, he's not going to be there. But if his impact is as much as we think it is, which I think is fair to expect, they will tumble out real fast from here and just let that naturally occur versus us assuming, because we're not doing that with other teams. We're not assuming that Houston is going to get the wins that they're going to get. We're basing it off of where they're at right now. And I know an injury is a little bit different, but it's not like that injury happened right before Selection Sunday and there's no body of work ahead of us to evaluate it. We still have 6 games left at a minimum. And I think that's enough to say, oh, this team doesn't look the same. Or, oh, they actually do look okay. They went 5-1. Maybe we keep them where they are.
I guess penalized to me would be a strong word. I wouldn't call it I'm penalizing Texas Tech. I think I am. I can't evaluate this team currently. It's hard. There's not really any data for, except the loss to Arizona State when he got hurt. So I have a very small sample size. Maybe I shouldn't project forward on this, but the team that all those good wins before was with the first team All-American, and that guy is gone. And I think it's gonna be just a huge change to the resume. And I get what you're saying, that we'll find out over the next 3 weeks what they look like without him, and we have maybe a general expectation of what that's going to look like. I guess I'm getting out in front of the skis a little bit with this one.
Yeah, well, I think the closest thing we have to this, you have to go back to Kenyon Martin. Cincinnati was a clear number 1 seed at the time. He goes down on like the last regular season game with the same injury. I think it was an ACL, but it was a serious injury either way. And they effectively came out and said, we moved them down 1 seed line, even though they had a 1 seed resume. So they landed 2. It's really the only All-American, this big time of example that's really out there in precedent land. But I think here you've got, like you guys said, the proof's in the pudding with the wins. If they want to penalize a 1 seed line, they can do that towards the back end of the process with the scrubbing. So I think it's reasonable to kind of hedge your bets on trying to project Texas Tech based on that. However, they could go out. We might not learn a lot in these last 5 games, because if they go and lose at BYU and lose at Iowa State and they're still like somewhat competitive, still not going to learn a ton. If they handle business at home with Kansas State, Cincy, and TCU, which they should still be good enough to win those 3 home games with a great environment in Lubbock, they're going to finish kind of about where they're at right now. And, the other thing I'll just say, I don't know if this matters for selection, might matter for seeding, is they'll become more deliberate. I think they won't play as fast. You're going to see Luke Bomboye be a big factor, a huge rim protector. Their defense might actually step up a notch, be a little better. And these coaches are geniuses. Like Grant McCaslin and Jeff Linder, they basically have 2 head coaches. I was right behind their bench at the NCAA tournament last year, saw how the whole sausage is made, and it's phenomenal. Like, that's why they were 2 minutes away from the Final Four. These guys are going to be a tough out, even as we go forward. I wouldn't be shocked if they like won at BYU or something, because they're so well prepared. Christian Anderson's an absolute dog. Atwell's very improved. Lawan Watts has been a phenomenal transfer from Washington State. And then Boumbaye is going to be one of the best rim protectors now that the rest of the Big 12 will learn about. So I think they're still going to be pretty darn good. I just don't, I agree with you guys. Like, the committee historically is going to punish them a little bit. Maybe 1 seed line. We'll see.
I think they should still win at BYU.
It's a tough
BYU's
environment
without
there,
Richie
though.
Saunders now. Yeah,
It
for
is.
sure. Provo's no
Yeah,
joke.
it's no joke. But I think it'll be a good game. Like, I still think that'll be a good game. I don't know that Texas Tech will win, but they're gonna fight. Like, watch these guys. They're gonna fight.
I think we would be remiss if we didn't at least discuss Gonzaga before we get into this actual vote, because I mean, where Gonzaga lands is kind of gonna, that's the X factor. This is our Memphis from last year, trying to find where this particular, actually top 6 seed mid-major deserves to be. And, we are smack dab between the 3 and 4 line on them. Obviously, they have good metrics, 5th in the net. All the predictives have them I think top 12 in all 3, if I'm not mistaken. but they have that horrible loss at Portland. I mean, the neutral loss to Michigan shouldn't be a negative, except they lost it by 40. And they just don't have the wins. But I do think, and I tweeted about this the other day, whenever we talk about non-conference strength of schedule, I think like intent has to be considered in there. And I don't think any team in the country got more penalized, I mean, hurt more by their schedule just falling to pieces than Gonzaga. Like they put together what should have been a top 5 non-conference strength of schedule, and so many of those teams have amounted to nothing. Like I was looking this morning, and of the 13, I think 6 of their 13 opponents have dropped like 35 spots on KenPom or more since the season started. Like they should have a better profile than they do. I don't know if the committee will weigh that at all. But obviously they're here in the 3-4 mix. Anybody want to offer some thoughts on Gonzaga? Graham, you unmuted yourself. You go ahead.
Yeah, I think there you go. I think Gonzaga has obviously not gotten the big wins like some other teams. We all know about the Portland loss. But if you just kind of like step back and just truly look at like the very basic number there, they are 12-1 against quads 1 and 2. That is an incredible number to be 12-1 against the first 2 quads. You combine it with a net that's 5, like very clearly a very efficient basketball team as well. I don't love this Gonzaga team compared to some past ones, but I think they deserve a lot of respect for simply being 12-1 against the first 2 quads.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is a team I seen up close and personal just a few days ago at Santa Clara, and they're good. Obviously, they're very good. But I think, yeah, it's an interesting resume. You carry great points on the schedule. The only good news about that is Oklahoma suddenly playing a little better. Creighton got a monster win yesterday, and Arizona State just beat Texas Tech. So those 3 actually just improved in the last few days. But I also would say Portland's going the opposite direction. They lost at home to Pepperdine last night, and it's about to fall into quad 4. So this is crazy. All that stuff's out of Gonzaga's control now. All they can control is what they have in front of them. They've obviously used that Portland loss to build off of and rally around and get better. I interviewed Graham Ike about it. He's calling it like, losing the 6th round, but it's a heavyweight fight. They're going to win the next 6. And so far they have. They were the better team at Santa Clara. They dominated the Dons last night. Those are 2 road wins that matter in those top 2 quads. And yeah, we'll see how it finishes up. They end at St. Mary's. But I think, yeah, for them, it's so hard because we talk about this every year. The data points are really tough to compare a WCC team to these power teams. Like right now, I'm looking at them versus Michigan State. Kerry, I know you're high on Virginia. And so it's just, you have to lean a little bit more than usual on some of the power numbers. At least in Gonzaga's case, they totally destroyed Kentucky. Like that game was embarrassing for the Wildcats. And they also beat Alabama convincingly, 10-point win. And I think that helps them a lot. UCLA is kind of a bubble team now, but that was a good win too. So again, for the Michigan State comparison's tough because Michigan State's playing a huge game like basically once a week. So you might lean a little bit more on the predictives. And Torvik doesn't love Gonzaga yet. They're still 14 there. And so it's tough. It's tough. I don't know if there's a right answer, but there's certainly like this fringe 3-4 area, if we would all agree on that to start.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I've had him at the top of my 4 line after that Portland loss.
Yeah.
For a while, but I kind of inched him back up after just some other events with Texas Tech losing and the Toppin thing. I dropped them back down to the top of my 4 line. That's kind of what I did with my drop, pending what Tech's going to do from here. I think too. I mean, Rocco hit everything right on the head there. Gonzaga's a little bit tougher because they don't have the deep conference that they're battling in from, January and February. So we're going back to what they look like. And let's also be fair, that weekend in Las Vegas, Michigan smoked everybody. I mean, if that's the Michigan that starts playing that way again, we can just hand them the national championship now.
Yeah.
And
At least
be
they're
done
number
with it.
1. At least
I mean, if
number
they're
1.
making that many threes and doing everything else, I don't know anybody's going to beat them. So, yes, it was an ugly loss, but they were just steamrolling everybody that week. I do think, in my mind too, just over the years of doing this, I mean, the net is also one of the NCAA's tools, and they invented it and they came up with it. And the net's telling them that it's their fifth best team. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to be fifth on the seed list, but I have a hard time believing that they're going to drop all the way to like the bottom of the 4 line if your net rating is a 5 in their own metric as well. I mean, I know there are Wobbs down there at 14. So again, this isn't clear cut. I could see him at the very back end of the 3. I could see him at the top of the 4. It then becomes a question. You're 26-2, one really bad loss, some quality wins in there. Is a 26-2 Gonzaga team with their history, are they really going to suggest them that they're a 15 or 16? I just have a hard time buying that they're going to fall much below like 13.
Yeah. One little point. Oh, Graham, if you don't mind, I just have one little point that was really important here. Braden Huff's their second best player. He's been out since the first Santa Clara game, and I got to see him up close and talk to him a little bit. I'm pretty sure, and hopefully this is wrong, but I'm pretty sure he won't be back till at least the Sweet 16 if they can get that far. And all these big wins in non-conference were with him. The committee's going to know that. And if you read the spokesman review, the local paper, this is all documented, so I'm not like giving you guys any behind the scenes info. And so the committee's going to know this, you would imagine. Stu Jackson's on the committee, WCC commish. And so that's really important too. But I also want to say that road win at Santa Clara just last week without him, that was their first significant result to show they can get to that level. And that game was seesaw for most of the night. They went on a big run late to take it over. But it was really important, I thought, because of the Huff thing, because they can pick that apart in the real committee room.
Yeah, that ball going off the knee and maybe not actually. That was a big moment in that game. But to that point, Gonzaga overcame some adversity, beating Santa Clara on the road. Michigan State has gotten plenty of chances to do something on the road. They haven't. I think the interesting comparison is the Road Warriors Virginia versus Gonzaga for who gets on the back end of that 3 line, because I don't think Michigan State has done enough given their opportunities. I think Gonzaga and UVA both stand out in certain ways that Michigan State doesn't.
Yeah. Rocco, you said I love Virginia. I don't love Virginia. I just don't know what to do with Virginia. I don't believe that their 4-0 quad 1A record is that good. None of those wins are against, top 5 seeds. We're not going to talk about any of the teams that they got those wins over tonight. The best one was at Louisville, and I think Michael Brown Jr. was out for that game, if I'm not mistaken. So Virginia is the biggest, I don't know what the heck to do with them team of this bunch. I ended up with them at 12 overall.
So clean, Gary. The resume is
that's
clean,
the thing.
though.
That's why I ended up with them at 12 overall.
I would have to go back and look at some specific examples, but there are ones in recent years where the committee has been enamored by stuff that is just very, very clean. And I had Virginia until last night. I had them at the top of the 5 line, but I have since switched them with Vanderbilt. That'll be a really interesting one. I don't know how much further I can get them up than 16, because to your point, I think the resume is a little bit of smoke and mirrors once you start to really dig in, but it is still impressive to be that clean at this stage of the game. And that's worth something. And I think the committee has shown in the past that they've respected that, even if the actual depth isn't there.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned earlier, I'm most curious about where Florida and Virginia land, because if you play the old, blind resume game, here's Team A, they're 23-3, 4-0 against Quad 1A, and they have resume metrics very similar to this team that's 20-6, 2-3 against Quad 1A. Well, I'm picking this team 101 times out of 100, but there's nobody in their right mind that would put Virginia ahead of Florida right now. So I just don't know what to do. I feel like it's going to be 11-12, and I might be off by a mile on both of them.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Virginia too, they've been hanging right around that top of the 5, bottom of the 4 line for all the reasons everybody mentioned. It is clean. They do have the loss to, the early loss to Butler, which, that turned out to not end up being a very good loss. I don't know. I mean, to me, the other question I asked myself the other day when I was doing my seed list for Tuesday, I'm thinking, okay, because you got Virginia in there, you've got Alabama, you got Arkansas, particularly for me at that particular time for the last spot on the 4 line before Vandy lost the other night. But even if you throw all 4 of those teams and you figure, okay, you got 15, 16, 17, and 18. I don't know about Vandy, but if I put Arkansas or Alabama on a neutral court against Virginia, I'm going to pick Arkansas or Alabama to win that game 99% of the time based on what I've seen them play this year. So, and I know I don't know how this year committee will do it. There have been times in the past, sometimes they debate on and off for a team for a while and they throw them out and they say, hey, throw them on a neutral court. Who do you think wins? And somebody
They did
gets
that a lot last year,
a
actually.
1 spot ahead or another. So, I mean,
God.
and
Is that
again,
how
I'm not saying
Xavier
that's
got
right
in?
because
Unbelievable.
Virginia being with the record they have, you got to give them kudos for that and those road wins. It's not easy to go on the road, and they're 8-1 on the road. So it's not knocking them. It's just you're trying to parse against some teams that have accomplished more on the high end, I suppose, and then where do you fit that in? Because they have the win at Texas non-conference and Ohio State, which are kind of both bubble-ish teams, although I don't know where you have Texas at this point.
All right. I think we have belabored all of these teams enough. We are ready to go back into that shared spreadsheet, do our votes. The teams are in there alphabetically right now. I thought that was probably the best way to do this rather than keeping them on this list in consensus seed order. So nobody's just going like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So at your leisure, go ahead in there and do some votes. Have some questions here from boy Bram Janvrin. What are the chances St. Louis plays the first 2 rounds in St. Louis? I mean, they're not going to get a protected seed, and even if they did, they're not going to get a top 2 seed. But they could be like a 7 seed right now. They could end up in like Kansas's region and be playing in St. Louis or Iowa State's region or whatever. I think that's very plausible because the committee will only protect them, for the first round. They don't care. Like if South Carolina was in the mix, they would send South Carolina to Greenville. They're gonna have no problem seed to Connecticut's 1 seed in that mix. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, arguably the best thing that happened to St. Louis is taking that loss to Rhode Island because now maybe they can win out, get that 7 seed. And Illinois and Purdue and Kansas all want to be 2 seeds playing out of St. Louis. So they could very well go to the Enterprise Center for a second round matchup.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. There's a part of me though that thinks being in the same city. I mean, I know Houston, obviously, in that situation, they can do it, but I don't know. There's a part of me that thinks that, I think if they had an opportunity to get him to Oklahoma City, rather, it would be a better thing to do.
I agree with that, Dave.
I'm not saying they will do that. I'm just saying, like, I realize it's not their home arena, but it's a little bit different.
Yeah, I would just say, going through the bracketing process a few times a week, I've landed about 30% of the time with St. Louis and St. Louis. So much of it has to do with the other 7s and 10 seeds. You get a lot of SEC teams, some Big Ten, and you might only have one place left to put them. And if it ends up being St. Louis, so be it. There's nothing
Yeah.
against the rules. And so much of it has little to do with St. Louis, which is the most fascinating part. Now, obviously, if in this example, if St. Louis happened to be, and maybe they won't be again after losing to Rhode Island, but if they happen to be the strongest of the 7s, if they go by the book, they would get their choice of where to go as they start slotting teams. And if there's no reason for shakeups, they could still stay in St. Louis as the best of the 7 seeds. So there's a few different ways for them to land there.
Whoever else feels like vamping on whatever while I update the spreadsheet here. We got our votes in, and I will be getting this ready momentarily. It will be Kansas, Florida, Nebraska, who am I missing? And Gonzaga joining the fray here.
Well, I think it's been a
Did
while
have-
since we've kind of touched on Illinois and Purdue. We didn't really touch on them much at all earlier.
Yeah, bring
I-
them in for sure.
Yeah, I think with Illinois, what really stands out are just, I guess, two things for me. One, they look really good. On the who do you not want to play, I don't want to play Illinois. On the other hand, they also have terrific wins that go with them. So I think when I look at Illinois and Purdue, I think Illinois has to be ahead for those two reasons and the win in West Lafayette. I think Purdue also has terrific road wins, really terrific road wins. But I think that when you're comparing both of those two teams, I would rather play Purdue than I would rather play Illinois. And I think Illinois winning on the road at Purdue is a differentiator.
We got a question in the chat here from Ty Himes. Nebraska has 2 games that are very close to quad 1. I guess those are road wins over Northwestern and Minnesota. How significant is that if they both jump up to Q1? In theory, it's not. You dig into the numbers, and those wins are those wins. But there is a human element of, if that 5-4 all of a sudden becomes 7-4, oh, they look a little bit better because, I mean, you look at the full resume, right? But here we are, we're just looking at the 5 best wins and the 5 worst losses. If all of a sudden they have 2 more quad 1 wins that aren't even among their top 5, it does just look a little bit better when all is said and done, but it shouldn't make a difference, right?
I don't think so. I mean, I think especially if they stay around the border of quad 1, quad 2, I think the committee likely is digging in enough to delineate that not all of these are equal. And so yes, the split looks a little bit nicer. But they're peeling back the onion enough. Although we give them a lot of crap for a lot of things. I think I'll give them some credit, and I think they would not really change their tune all that much based on where those fall.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always reluctant to get too much into a player missing a game here or there, or a handful of games, because during the course of a season, many teams have somebody that's out sick for a night or was sick and you don't hear about it, but they didn't have a very good game because they've been, throwing up all day long or something like that. So, but, it will be interesting to see if Illinois finishes the season strong, if there's any consideration given for that Michigan State game without Boswell and the Wisconsin game in particular without Stojakovic and Boswell, when they play without both of them. Again, results are results. I mean, the committee doesn't assume teams are going to win or lose. So the results are the results. I'm 100% believer in that. That's just one of those, like a nuances. You can do that with a lot of teams as you go through. Nuances of, does that make a difference of maybe one spot on the seed list? It's not going to jump you a line, but does it make a difference, one spot on a seed list for somebody down the road? It would be interesting to hear what those discussions were like, if in fact they happen.
Can I bring up one additional question, which isn't specifically related to Illinois, but I'm curious your guys' take. So I've seen this come up a lot, especially as we discuss kind of 1-2 lines where the head-to-heads are there for some of these teams. Yes, there's certain teams that have head-to-heads where with the unbalanced schedule, it is just a home win. How big of a factor is that? Because to me, yes, it's nice to have the head-to-head, of course, but if there's no reciprocal return, I have a little bit of trouble giving it the full endorsement that is truly a result that is a needle mover when, there's really no other side to that story. We didn't see X team go to X team. They just went to their played at home and they won by 3 points. That's great, but how do we really evaluate that or how do you guys evaluate that in the world of unbalanced schedules now? I'm curious.
At least in the vast majority of leagues, everybody plays everybody, but fuck the ACC. Miami doesn't play Duke. Clemson doesn't play Virginia at all. Are you kidding me? It's a joke. Clemson gets double dips against Pitt and Georgia Tech and doesn't play Virginia. Get out of here.
Well, I'm thinking
But
even like an Iowa State Houston situation actually is probably the one
yeah,
that's the most relevant here, right? Because Iowa State obviously came back and won that game. We alluded to it earlier, but they don't go to Fertitta. They don't. Houston doesn't get a shot on their home court to even the score in that way. So yeah, it's nice that Iowa State has the head-to-head. I would still argue Iowa State is ahead of Houston. That's just my own personal take. But how do we can we truly give that as much credence as we should, a head-to-head result when push comes to shove? I'm curious what you guys how you would weigh that in your own
I really
analysis.
tend to look for a few different things there. If it's a sweep, that's really important to me.
Sure,
If it's a road win and you only played once and you were the team that won on the road, that's
big.
important to me. If you won at home in the only game and it was an absolute demolition, then I give it a little bit of credence, but I don't give it too much anyways. But to your point, like Iowa State winning by 3 over Houston, for me, that's a bit of a wash. Like it really is. Like I would expect you to win at home. So to only winning by 3,
Right.
I'm kind of a little bit more impressed with the road team.
Okay.
Yeah, the other thing
I
is, in college football this year, the Notre Dame Miami head-to-head thing became such a huge deal, but obviously they have a limited sample of games to look at. In basketball, it's quite contrary. We have about triple the amount of games as football by the time we're at the end, and there's about 18 different ways to slice teams up. And I think that's what the beauty of the committee should be is the nuance and opinions. Like if I was on the actual committee, I would value road wins more than anything because I think it's the hardest thing to do in this sport, and I've always said that. But I also think you can look at a lot of things like who you lost to, or it's not just all about top of your resume. I guess it is for the big seeds like the ones and twos, but for the rest of it, there's a lot of different ways to separate teams, and the head-to-head should be. And Graham, you make a great point. If you played once and you went on the road and you went to their place and beat them, like that's a big statement. But otherwise, if it's one game on a neutral or one game on a neutral is not bad either. But I guess like one home win, you should be able to go much further than that and make a decision. And the thing I get worried about as we go forward, especially with all the committee love for the WAB last year, listen, it's a cool tool. I've liked it behind the scenes for years before they have formally approved it. But I think the thing I'm scared about is the way they voted last year. I think the worst team that got in was 49 Xavier. Everybody in the top 40 got in. If we become too dependent on one metric, it starts to automate the nuance, and we're losing the whole purpose of the committee. If they're just going to do it like that, just let Ken Palm have his dream of an automated field. Like we're losing the discussion. There should be surprises every selection Sunday, and anyway, I don't know where I'm going with this, but that just kind of got me on a tangent there. But that's the beauty of it, like, and that's why we vote, and that's why we should all have a little bit different opinions on it. And anyway, that's where we're at.
listen, how much the committee relied on the WOB last year. It broke Shelby. He's done. I think it broke Tim as well. He doesn't want to do it anymore. It's so
Well, it's
automated. It almost
frustrating.
broke me.
It's frustrating. It could be the greatest metric of all time, and maybe it is. But like, you shouldn't have one. You have so many different ways to paint a picture of a team season that we shouldn't all see it the same way.
Yeah, I also cover Major League Baseball, and it's just like WAR, wins above replacement, and everybody that knows how to go to Baseball Reference or Fangraphs and find that singular data point is like, here you go. This is who the MVP should be. This is this and that. It's like, no, there's so much more to it. There's so many more data points, and yeah, I'm
Yeah.
with you. There is that. I do think we've gotten to the point. I think I tweeted this earlier today. Like, we should probably be the first thing we do rather than sorting by net. We should probably sort by WOB because it does seem like the more important metric, and then just kind of adjust from there. But yeah,
Well, I'm
like
not trying to.
the little
I'm not trying to encourage it. I'm trying to encourage more free thinking, more dialogue, more nuance.
Yeah.
So I would totally understand if there are, well, however many people are on Bracket Matrix, 300 people doing that, or a good chunk of them. They're probably going to get a good score. Like, but what's the point of that? Like, what are you really achieving? That you can read a computer and regurgitate it? Like, it's not proving anything.
I still have some hope, and I have some hope for a few different teams last year. Louisville had good metrics, including WOB.
Yeah, got an 8.
They got an 8.
Yeah.
The committee looked at West Virginia at 8-3 above for their WOB, and they saw Xavier at a negative WOB. They still put Xavier in because they thought they were more deserving for all the other reasons. So there still are some nuggets around there that makes me think, okay, the committee really is actually looking at teams independently.
I mean, to your point, Rocco, I think one of the other challenges that if you don't have some of the nuance or context, since this has come up tonight, let's say Texas Tech does struggle down the stretch here, okay?
Mhm.
So their net is going to fall if that happens, right?
Yep.
So should teams that beat them when they were at full strength, then their win is not going to look as good potentially 3 weeks from now as it does now. Where if you don't, that's where you can't just have if the only thing you have is the computer number, and let's say they end up 27 in the net as opposed to 15 or 16 or whatever it is now.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's not going to drop them out of a quadrant, but it could be from a 1A down to a thing, or, you know, I'm just saying there has to be, I think, if they want to do it well, there has to be some element on there where people can evaluate a significant change like that. And, well, when did you beat them?
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. It happens every year too to somebody, it seems like.
Yeah. Let's go to Doug Gottlieb with his rant on KenPom and how teams change over the course of the year. So
Well,
we're on these.
Big 12 had 3 injuries in 4 days that are very
Yeah.
substantial.
Oh my God. It's been crazy. All right. So we've got these 8 teams here. I feel like Kansas is the only team we haven't particularly hit on. I think we should touch on them a little bit before we do our next vote to determine the 2 seeds. Matt, I don't think we've heard from you in a hot minute. You want to jump in on Kansas, which is, I mean, it should be an interesting debate between Kansas and Purdue for the final number 2 seed.
Yeah, Kansas elite wins stands out to me, and they have a chance to get a couple more here in the next couple of weeks. I hate to think about the Darren Pearson situation, but the win against Arizona, it wasn't fog. I understand that. Without him, I just keep going back to that when I look at the back half of the 2 line and top of the 3 line. Like, how much is the committee going to look at that and go, okay, listen, these guys can play without him? So that goes back to my Texas Tech point. Like, if they show us going forward, they can win without Toppin, then okay, then I'm a fool. We'll bump them back up. I think the same can be said for Kansas, right? Like, if they can continue to win, if Pearson plays half the game or a quarter of the game or whatever it is, and they win without him, I mean, I think you look at those wins, especially the Arizona win and the Tennessee win, and elevate that resume even more. I have them at number 9 overall. I looked at them at number 8. I couldn't quite get them there yet, but the 5 wins stick out to me with their resume. The 5 elite wins, that is.
Peterson's situation is crazy, and certainly Graham can go for an hour on the Peterson situation, but they do seem to be better without him, which makes no sense at all. It's totally Ewing theory situation, but their 2 worst losses, he played like 30 minutes in each, and in 2 of their best wins, he didn't play. It's wild.
They're better defensively. They're better defensively when he's out because the other 5 guys are locked in. They're also like a lot of standing around when he is in offensively.
Yeah.
Where they're like, this guy's so freaking good, I don't need to do anything. But it makes them less efficient in some cases. So it's fascinating. But I think they're very good either way, and that's why my opinion, Graham, I'm going to let you take the floor here. But my opinion is just judge the book by its cover. There's enough great results there. They're good with or without him.
Yeah. I mean, I will say the one thing that, to your point, Rocco, I think was very problematic when they played TCU at home, they played at West Virginia, they played at UCF. They weren't understanding yet. How do we play when this guy's not playing? They really didn't seem to understand that concept because he had been gone earlier in the season, but then he came back. And then all of a sudden he was gone again. They were like, okay, now we don't know what to do because we just started to get used to playing with the guy. So I think after those 3 games, they've been a totally different team, playing much better down the stretch. Yeah. And they've really kind of I heard a conversation that they're like platooning like Kentucky did, but first platoon is the starting 5, and second platoon is you replace Peterson with one other guy. But they've learned how to play the 2 platoon system. I think there's something to that. But the one team I actually wanted to touch on a little bit was Purdue, because Rocco, last year you kept harping on Texas losing at home too much. And Purdue is sending that same signal to me. I'm concerned that they cannot protect West Lafayette. Not only are they losing, they're often getting kind of beat down in West Lafayette. That's a little bit concerning for a 2 seed.
Yeah, but I think the three teams they've lost to at home are very much national championship contenders. Michigan, Iowa State, and Illinois for those not looking at the data. But yeah, I mean, Texas is a whole different case. I seriously am trying so hard not to touch that because it's a very frustrating thing. Um, and yes, it's concerning. Like I think Purdue probably may not be able to get to the 1 seed line now because of those three home losses. It might be almost impossible. That what they have left is only road Ohio State and Northwestern, and they get Michigan State and Wisconsin at home and Indiana at home. But like none of those probably get them up to the 1 line, or two would almost be lucky at this point. Um, yeah, it is concerning, but they've certainly made up for it on the road, in my opinion. I mean, the collection of road wins is very terrific. You go to Wisconsin, that's aged extremely well and win. They went to Iowa and won by 21 points. That's very good. They won at Nebraska. That's their best technical resume road win. And then you add in a USC road win. I mean, it's a nice collection. It adds up to a lot. And that's just where, as of right now, not nobody else really has that many road wins that are in volume that are that significant.
Let me go back to the KU Purdue comparison here for a minute.
Yep.
As of right now, Purdue's slightly above, but if you want to project going forward, Kansas has a chance to get 3 more quad 1 wins. Purdue, they go to Iowa State, Michigan State at home, Wisconsin at home. So I guess their chances as well. But you look at the elite status of those wins, you bump Kansas there. I would love to be inside the selection committee room come a few weeks from now in the discussion about Kansas with Peterson. I don't know what that conversation is going to look like. I know what it'd be for me, but how they're going to talk about that whole dynamic and how it looks in the whole body of the resume is going to be fascinating to me.
Well, and the thing to keep in mind on that as well is I mean, by the book, it's just whatever team they're bringing to the tournament, right? So you just have to keep monitoring.
But who knows what team they're bringing, though, right?
Exactly. So it could be totally different than what we're discussing now. Like, for all we know, he might dip out by the end of the Big 12 tournament. I don't think he will, but you can't rule anything out based on what we've seen all season long.
Yeah,
this is I think we are. All right, go ahead, Graham, and then we're gonna.
I was just gonna say, I think this is the first time I can ever recall in bracketology where I'm looking at a team from an injury concern standpoint and thinking maybe you bump them up because they haven't played so much of the season. Like they are like a top 15 team without him. What are they if he can play more in the tournament? Like that's actually a bit of a question. So
who knows? Yeah.
A really interesting debate from that standpoint.
But you guys hit on it before, though. Their 2 worst losses, quote unquote, he played in, and their best win he didn't play in. I know there's a lot of nuance around him, like playing part of the game, playing up. But to me, it's as simple as that. Like they have shown that they can lose to people, the worst. Well, they're not even bad teams that they lost to, but the worst teams that they lost to with him playing significant minutes, and they've proven that they can, beat another 1 seed without him. I don't know. I feel like that's maybe we're overcomplicating it, but
well, I will say they were leading both of those games at halftime before Peterson eventually had minutes restrictions or whatever that was in the second half.
General cramping or whatever the hell is going on with them. Yeah. All right. I think we are ready to vote on the 2 seed line here. If you want to go back into the spreadsheet, I just shared the link to the YouTube in our chat because I think we've lost what few viewers we had. And if you guys can share that on your socials, I would appreciate it so that people are actually watching us nonsense that we're going through. But after that, whenever you're ready, go ahead and vote on these 8 teams that are on the spreadsheet. I believe I put them. Yeah, they are ready to be voted on. And then we will get ready for the 3 seed line, and hopefully the rest of this will go pretty quickly. I think we've had some great conversations. We've gone a little bit longer than I was hoping to, but what else is new with us, right? Let me check the chat, see if we got anything. Dustin Huber 4304 said, if you consider the sick, then what about Nebraska missing Rink Moss and Brandon Frager against Michigan? And they were still a little bit on the on the mend for the home loss to Illinois. Dave, I thought that's where you were going with it when you were talking about, teams missing players, but you went the Illinois route. I thought you were going to talk about Nebraska there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I'm saying. It's very difficult to just start going into every little nuance of every game of a player that's out here or there, because there's so many variables and many of them that we don't even hear about sometimes. So I think you have to kind of take the results are what they are, and then down the road, when you look at the big picture of a team, they can say, okay, well, in these games, these players were out, and would that have made it, the result is the result. But when they're at their whole, what did they look like? And if there's an adjustment to be made when you rescrub the seed list, then I think then that's probably the time to do it.
To Nebraska's credit, they were very, very competitive at Michigan in that game. Very easily could have won it. But in their other losses, they've been competitive too. That's something that's impressed me about Nebraska is they just haven't been getting blown out. Like, they have been competitive each and every game.
And the Nebraska-Michigan game, no Rick Most in that game, which made it even more incredible. They should have been blown out on paper based on that. He's such an integral part of their rebounding, running offense through the high post, and elite shooting from the outside when he picks and pops. So to do that, I mean, they're a good team, very good team. They also play down to their competition sometimes, which hurts their power numbers. So we'll see if they slip up down the stretch. Wouldn't shock me. They have an LA trip where they got to play both our friendly little LA bubble teams, and they get another Corn Bowl to finish the season at home.
All right. In a development that I 100% saw coming, we are split on Connecticut and Houston at 5 and 6 overall. I'm just going to be the one to flip, and I will put Houston at 5 for now. If we want to go back at the end of the night and scrub that, fine. I don't think we need to have a whole vote and discussion on that. But it'll be Houston at 5, Connecticut at 6, Illinois at 7, Purdue at 8. And now we will go back to where are we at in the process here? Groundhog's Day. I think we need to discuss Vanderbilt, Arkansas, St. John's, Tennessee, and North Carolina to decide who joins Alabama, Texas Tech, Virginia, and Michigan State. So I will work on the spreadsheet in that regard. If anybody wants to touch on any of those 5 new teams, again, those are Vanderbilt, Arkansas, St. John's, Tennessee, and North Carolina. I was actually surprised we all had North Carolina in our top 24. I don't think they're really even close to the conversation, but they are there if anybody wants to talk about them.
Well, for a top 16 consideration of those teams, the only one that I really am very interested in is Vanderbilt. I think they've got an argument. I also think they've whiffed on their top chances when they've had chances. They beat Alabama, kind of got a little bit of lucky with winning that game in Nashville. They lost on a home floor to Florida. They did have a chance to go to Arkansas and win, didn't win that one. If you look at all their top wins, you could say they don't really have an elite win at any point this season. So I am impressed by their ability to go on the road and beat some tournament teams. I just feel like they haven't, when they've had chances, really shown you that they're protected seed status in a way that kind of goes past the numbers, right? Rocco, we're talking about the numbers. I think numerically, you can make a better argument for Vanderbilt being a top 16 team than when you look a little bit, peel the onion back and see who they've actually beaten to get there. That's kind of that Virginia thing for me, where I know you guys have talked about that a little bit earlier. Maybe it's not quite as impressive. I feel that way pretty strongly about Vanderbilt. I think the numbers outpace what they've actually done.
Yeah, I largely agree with that. I've liked their team most of the season, and the way they play is a fun style. They play a lot like Gonzaga, actually, just rim to rim, good athletes, good shooters. They've been playing, and I think he just came back without Duke Miles, right? So that's been a part of their story. Duke's still out. He didn't play last night. He's missed 8 games now, so that they might get an uptick. They played a lot of the season without Frankie Collins as well. But Tyler Tanner, of course, has emerged as one of the best players in the country. That's been an awesome story. Devin McLaughlin's a beast in the paint. But resume wise, we have to treat them for what they are. But I'm just letting you know, so because they could improve if they get those two pieces back. In the non-conference, it wasn't the strongest, but they pounded St. Mary's. That was impressive. The road win at UCF probably got overlooked early for bracket purposes. Now it matters quite a bit. And they've been, up and down in this SEC race. That game with Oklahoma was concerning. They were down 21 points with about 3 minutes to go, went on a wild goose chase run to almost steal the win. And the same thing happened last night at Missouri. So I think you look at the body of work now, and it's just a little bit empty compared to what you would want for a protected seed. Best road win is debatably either Auburn or UCF, right? And then you look at, some decent home wins, leading with the Alabama one you talked about, Graham. So it's just, I don't know. I think they need that big stamp of approval, and they end the year with 3 straight road games: Kentucky, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. Obviously, getting the Kentucky or Tennessee road win would go down as their best road win. So they've probably got to get one of those to be an actual top 16 by the end.
I have them as a protected seed right now because they're 7-4 versus my projected tournament teams, 9-3 away from Nashville. I do agree that there's not a ton of meat to the bone, especially with one quad 1A win, but the metrics like them. With the metrics combined with the stats I just gave you, I feel like that's enough. But I could hear an argument for them not being there. I tell you, I keep going back to Texas Tech, but if Texas Tech does falter, Vanderbilt could be a team that really benefits from that going forward, especially with those two pieces coming back, Rocco.
Yeah, no doubt. No, I think that's a great synopsis. And they're a great option. It's not like they're not a good option. I just think with Alabama, their big win last night, I think that pushed them ahead of Vandy. Obviously, Vandy losing as well. Not to do this like one day overnight discussion. It's a body of work discussion. But yeah, I think that's what's leaving them up for debate, really. They would have been solidly in with that win last night.
I think the hard part with Vandy here is at a different part in the bracket, you might see a team like Vanderbilt with the metrics and just the overall numbers get a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt. But I think when I use this analogy every year, and I apologize for you guys having to listen to it again another time. But it truly
Are
is.
we buttressing? Let's talk about buttressing.
No, we're not. But that is, I actually forgot about that. So I will hold on to that one. No, but when you get to the protected seed territory, it's truly like when you're playing golf and you're trying to go from dropping your score from 80 to 70. Later up back in the field, you're going from 190. It's very easy to shave 10 strokes when you shoot 100. But you need something elite to start pushing yourself ahead of teams that you're around, like that Vanderbilt is around. And it's just hard to look at that and say, hey, this is going to move the needle past a team, some of those teams on the 4 line. Probably the one that's maybe best suited for moving behind Vanderbilt would be someone like Virginia, where it again is sort of a numbers play versus a truly elite quality play. But I just have trouble getting Vandy forward with the wins that you put there against the teams that are ahead of them.
Well, we are trying to respect the whole, pick 8, rank 8 process, but I think I'm just going to put these 5 teams together with the 4 we previously had: Alabama, Texas Tech, Virginia, and Michigan State, and we'll just rank 1 through 9. Does anybody object to that?
I mean, I do think at some point, a really interesting debate, if you were, and depending on how we vote, it could come down to that. But like a Virginia Vanderbilt head-to-head comparison gets much more interesting on those 2 teams. At least it has been for me, figuring out, down the road here, who's been, when Vanderbilt lost a few games, okay, well, who's who's 15, who's 16, or who's 16, who's 17. Because there's a lot of things about them that seem kind of similar, other than, that Virginia obviously has those, we've mentioned before, the quad 1A road wins, but they're a little less than elite.
What's the thing? Do you value those wins, or do you value Vanderbilt's predictives? And that's where, I mean, what's your preference, I guess, would be to answer your question there.
Well, I mean, let's think about Vanderbilt's predictives. Like, a lot of that has been built on coming back late in games that they were getting beat up pretty bad.
That's fair.
And
Yeah.
losing respectively. Like, those games were kind of domination to a certain extent. They were very lucky to keep that Oklahoma score as close as it was. And that's just one of the many times that they've done that recently. So almost had the most miraculous one of all time last night against Missouri. That was a crazy game. Absolutely phenomenal game to watch. But
I screamed.
yeah, that was wild. But I do think Vanderbilt at times has gotten pretty badly outclassed in games that they shouldn't.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, from a numbers perspective, especially if you're looking on the results side, I mean, they're basically 116 in the WAB, one is 17, 116 in the SOAR, one's 13. Nets are right together. So there's a lot of things from a metrical standpoint that puts these teams very close together.
Yeah, I would lean on the road win side. It's tough to go to Louisville, NC State, SMU this year and win games there. It's really impressive to me. And, they've been good on the road all year long. I think it's only 2 total away neutral losses for Virginia. We just watched Vanderbilt lose at a bubble team yesterday, for example. Virginia's been the consistent squad when they've had their chances, much more than Vanderbilt.
Yeah,
Not
and
to
that's why I
mention-
have Virginia a
Agree.
little bit ahead of them right now. But I mean, it's just
Yeah.
it's not as clear cut as you would think it would be, given
Yeah.
what Virginia's wins just look like at quick glance.
And there's a common result here too. They both went to Austin and Vanderbilt got pasted and Virginia won.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and I think the other thing too on Vanderbilt's predictives, and again, I like Vanderbilt. I think Byington's doing a hell of a job there. But I think in general, Vanderbilt played their neighbors Lipscomb and just totally took advantage of them, beating them by 44 points. They played New Haven, beat them by 43, destroyed just some terrible quad 4s. And so basically when they start playing their real games, they've already got a huge buffer for those power numbers. Not to mention the part that Graham mentioned. They've had 2 games now, the road game, the home game with Oklahoma and the game last night at Mizzou, where they're down in a deep hole and they put on a full court press for about 5 minutes and almost win the thing. Credit to them. But that if you watch those games, which maybe the committee didn't, those felt like 20-point losses.
Yeah. I mean,
So
I've said
all
for
of
a
that
while
is
with
helping their
these-
power numbers. Is my
with
overall point.
these teams who can just force turnovers against quad 4 teams and run up the score. Like, there is a couple years ago with Iowa State, there was that whole argument of like, it actually is hard to win by 40 against anybody. No, if you're going to press for 40 minutes and just like demoralize your quad 4 opponent, you can run up the score. And I think Vanderbilt is one of these teams that they can get out and run. They can kind of trick the predictive metrics to some degree. And what's funny is like the predictive metrics are what believed in Vanderbilt before the season. I think KenPom had them at like 24 before the year. They weren't ranked in the AP poll to start the season. So they've come on strong. Actually, they were 19th looking at KenPom on November 3rd. So
Yeah.
even from that, they've kind of tricked the metrics. But
the hardest thing with
just-
Vandy, Carey, real quick to finish, the
Yeah.
hardest thing for leaving, this has been a problem with Vandy the whole time. This isn't a new problem with Vanderbilt, but the hardest thing to go against them was that their resume numbers were so strong. But that has slipped. I mean, I think their WAB is at 15 or 17 or something like that now. And so there's a little bit more justification from the numbers now to leave them out, or with before it was really hard to justify with how strong those numbers were.
All right. Let's get this going because I just poured my fourth and final Guinness, and I'm not ready to continue this soberly. God. All right.
Time to
So
go to
we
the
have
store. It's
the
time to go to the
oh,
store.
right. Some of you guys have already voted. We're gonna vote on these 9 teams. I only have 5 of them on the shared YouTube spreadsheet, but you see the 9 in the spreadsheet that the 6 of us have access to. We're going to vote on these 9. They are going to join Florida, Gonzaga, Kansas, and Nebraska, the top 4 from this. And then from there, we will rank those 8. And then, and I know we're kind of bastardizing the process here, but then we'll just take the 4 leftovers from that and rank them. And that will be our final 16. If we feel like there's a team that doesn't survive from this vote that is worth considering at 16 overall, I'm happy to have that conversation. Graham texted me he's going to have to jump shortly to deal with kids. Who asked you to have 3 kids, dude? Knock it off. But yeah, go ahead and vote if you haven't already. Somehow I asked you all to like tweet out the link and then we lost viewers. I don't know what that was about.
Maybe they wanted to see you a couple more Guinnesses in.
Yeah, I should have done shots. I said I was going to do shots of bourbon after every seed line we finished. We'll save that for the real deal. I'll do 16 shots in one day. We're going to put Rocco in charge of
a bit of
seeding
a
the 13s.
I think Texas Tech's going to be a bit of a wild card for us here on this upcoming vote. Really, really impressive resume. But to Matt's point earlier, how much do you factor in that JT Toppin injury? I think for me personally, I want to see how they do a bit without him before I really make a move. But I could certainly see us disagreeing on how to handle that.
And just so we're clear, I mean, I'm all
you
good with being him in the top 16. I understand that. I guess my philosophy is a little different, but I will not fight if they are in that top 16. I'm the new guy here, so come on.
Yeah, I thought we brought you in to fight. Come on, man. All right, votes are in. It will be Michigan State, Virginia, Texas Tech, and Alabama joining the group. So nobody from these new 5. Not surprising. I feel like we were at a pretty strong consensus on the top 16 heading into this. I think, Matt, you had Vanderbilt at like 14 or 15 or something. That was the only one that was
Correct.
a bit different from anything else that we had. So I'm not surprised that we ended up with a consensus top 16.
Yeah.
All right. So these will
Shoot,
be
I'm sorry.
8.
I had 2 number 5s. I guess it doesn't matter because all these teams are out anyway.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
fine.
we're good now.
We are good. What do you guys think of this so far? With everybody just being able to see everybody's vote out. I'm not actually
Honestly, I'm not even looking.
I'm
not even
really
at your
looking
guys'.
either.
I'm not
just
either.
staying.
Yeah.
I'm staying in column J, Carrie.
All right. I'll update based on what we've got here. So it'll be Kansas, Florida, Nebraska, and Gonzaga. I don't know why I said Gonzaga like that, like I'm from Minnesota. Virginia, Michigan State, Texas Tech, and Alabama in this next vote. And I will get our voting spreadsheet ready if anybody wants to talk on any of those teams in particular.
I think we
feel like
already
we've
talked
hit on
about
all of
most of
them.
them. The only thing
Yeah.
I would mention is Nebraska's non-conference schedule. Be interesting to see how that's treated. They probably didn't expect they were going to be one of the top teams in the country. And some of the teams that they scheduled non-conference, I do think they probably thought they were going to be a little bit better than they were. So I can see that as well. I'm very curious how that's going to go. But if you just look at their overall record, Tim Kruger is not on here today, but that's something he brings up every year, and that is a phenomenal overall record that Nebraska has playing out of the Big Ten, one of the strongest conferences in the country. So just something to be said about pairing a very elite record with some really big wins.
and no bad losses, right? Even at Iowa as your worst loss is not bad, but versus Purdue, who we had was our 8 overall. I mean, I think that's why Nebraska's ahead of Gonzaga for me. They didn't lose to Portland. They don't have anything close to a bad loss on their resume.
And they looked pretty good in those games too. It's not like they
Yes.
really got blown out by anybody or were struggling. And you were talking about Vanderbilt struggling a ton and then made a comeback and made it close. I mean, they were in those games against three projected top two seeds here.
The quad
Yeah,
four
they-
is alive in Portland, Kerry.
I'm sorry.
The quad four is alive in Portland, Kerry.
Portland. Yeah, they should have beaten Michigan even without Rinkmost. They were ahead for most of that game. I mean, I think game control is more of a college football metric than a college basketball metric, but they led for the majority of that game. That would have been a plus 0.95 to their WOB, or a plus 0.95. I was looking at that earlier. They do have the second best WOB in this group. Their WOB is way better than Florida's. But that's just 4 losses versus 6 losses to some extent, right?
Well, and that's where you wonder, does the discussion come in about the non-conference schedule, right? Because Nebraska piled up a lot of wins early. Now that doesn't mean they're obviously a really, really good team and deserve where they are. But I'm a little bit like Graham. I wonder, depending on where they're at, if it's along a cut line or something like that at a certain point, does that come up for discussion? If you're comparing him against somebody else that maybe has a couple more losses, but then who played a much stronger non-conference schedule.
Which
Yeah,
is why
I
I
mean,
think
if you-
after. Oh, sorry, Kerry, go ahead.
No, you're at it. Go, Matt.
Well, that's why I think there's a kind of delineation for me after Florida at 10. Then there's a space for me after that with Nebraska at 11. And I think Kansas and Florida, the way they scheduled the non-conference, has clear separation between Nebraska at 11. So I think, for me, anyways, when I evaluate teams, that the non-conference schedule is a ding for me if it's poor. And now I know that the schedule didn't work out the way they wanted it to, but still, that's just out of their control.
Yeah, I mean that it's less than a full win gap in WOB. What is that? 0.85. Yeah, even after 3.5 Guinnesses, I can do mental math. But if you replace, right, if Nebraska had played those games away from home against Arizona, Duke, and Connecticut, and Florida had played West Georgia, USC Upstate, and North Dakota, they'd have the same WOB because Nebraska probably loses those games and Florida probably wins them. Florida definitely wins those games. So yeah, it is interesting. A good argument to not just fixate on that singular data point. Rocco had to jump for a minute, but he'll be back for the oh boy. 2 of you have already voted. You guys are ahead of the game. I gotta stop updating the spreadsheet before I'm ready. Yeah, let's go ahead and vote on these 8. Alabama, Florida, Gonzaga, Kansas, Michigan State, Nebraska, Texas Tech, and Virginia.
Yes.
What is your Go ahead, Graham.
I was just gonna say, as you guys are voting, I do think it's kind of really just interesting to look at Arizona, Duke versus Houston there. Like, we all know they won those games,
Mhm.
but when you see it on a sheet like this compared to the competition, man, it stands out.
I'm just going to throw a question to the group. What does your gut say? Where does Virginia land on Saturday? Because
16.
I've said several times they're the one I can't decide on.
16.
Who said
16.
14, 15,
Jeez.
16, something like that. Yeah. It's a safe
All
play.
right.
Are they taking bets on this stuff for the bracket?
I'm sure they
preview?
are.
That's insane.
CNN and Kalshi.
That's just crazy stuff, man.
Is Stephen A. Smith going to run for president? Tune in next time on CNN.
I do think
All right, I guess
Virginia
I
will
should
tell us a bit about how this committee treats Quad 1A. If they see that 4-0 and Virginia's
Yep.
really high, maybe that number means something to them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I would concur with that. That is why I'm very interested to see where Virginia ends up, because I don't think they are a top 12 team. I don't think anybody thinks they're a top 12 team. I mean, none of the metrics say they're a top 12 team, but I keep landing on them at 12 overall.
Well, they did spend a lot in NIL, Kerry, if that makes you feel better.
Oh, it definitely does. Yeah.
And they fought to get Malik Thomas eligible, which is a
Did,
little bit of a sting for those of us out here in San Francisco.
how much of that NIL did they have to convert to Eastern European currency?
That's a good question.
Here, I'm the idiot slowing us down here with my votes. Don't mind me. We'll be ready in a sec.
Don't make
All
us try to cheat and view at the spreadsheet.
Huh?
Don't
Cheat
make
and
us
view the
try to cheat
spreadsheet?
and look at the spreadsheet. We've been trying to look at our own columns the whole night.
I've been
I'm
trying to watch Marshall and Appalachian State personally. That was a hell of a finish.
nice. All right. So we have our top four for sure. Although I will ask, Dave, you're the only one that doesn't have Kansas at one. You have Florida at one and Kansas at two. Obviously not a huge difference, but I know you were the one who started the conversation on Florida. I did say I was going to call out people on their ballots. What's your case for Florida over Kansas?
I think it's to this point, the largest thing is the predictives and just their sheer dominance running through the SEC. But I mean, I don't have a problem with someone thinking Kansas has had a deeper mark. I mean, it's a close battle. I've had those two by each other for seems like 2 weeks now. So that's just the way I see it. To me, it's right now. If I were gonna vote on the two, I would give a slight edge to Florida. But I completely understand the context and argument for Kansas, and I don't have an issue with them being ahead.
I mean, I would certainly pick Florida in a neutral game. I think as good as Badunga is, that Florida front court would be able to do its thing. Chinyelu would have like 47 rebounds like he does every single night. And I think Florida probably wins, although it hinges on how Xavier Lee shoots and whether Darren Peterson plays.
I mean, I think put it this way, it would be like a great Elite Eight type of a game, right? I mean, you put those two teams on a court 10 times, they probably each win 5. That's just kind of the nature of it.
All right, like I said
Badunga,
earlier, we're just
Badunga
gonna
versus Chinyelu would be phenomenal.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Like I said earlier, we're just going to take the 4 leftovers from this vote and then vote on them 1 through 4. So that will be Alabama, Michigan State, Texas Tech, and Virginia. I'm happy to entertain some conversations on those 4 teams before we conduct our final vote, but Graham has already thrown his votes in there. Holy shit. He's got kids to put to bed. It's fine. I mean, I feel like we haven't said a whole lot about Alabama since our initial, Bediako conversation. Obviously, we're going to end up with them in our top 16. I think they could be scraping up against 12 overall if those wins are considered at full strength.
I mean, Greg Byrne is on the committee for like the 4th year in a row. Yeah. I think if anything comes up throughout the bracket involving the SEC and it's close to a tie, I almost just give it to the SEC because that's just the way everything's gone the last couple of years, and the NCAA is behaving that way as an organization.
Well, I think this Alabama team in some ways reminds me of Texas A&M last year, where I was actually surprised they were quite so high in the bracket preview, which really kind of fit their resume metrics. And then I kind of kept that in the back of my head all year. And then at the actual bracket, they put them about where I would have put them. So I'm kind of curious if the same thing will happen with Alabama, where if they are, for example, like 12 or 13 overall, we might be like, oh, the committee loves Alabama. They're not worried about the injuries at all or the suspensions or anything. And then all of a sudden you get to the actual bracket and they're like, oh, no, we just seated them where we thought they should be. We didn't, sometimes there's just not that consistency between the preview and the final version.
I have a really hard time getting Michigan State ahead of Alabama. Just because, I mean, Alabama, the way they went out and scheduled, they have a really strong neutral court win, which really, when you push comes to shove, it was in Chicago against Illinois. It was not really even particularly neutral. That St. John's win has looked a lot better over the past, 6 weeks than it did, prior to. Michigan State has not done anything of note really on the road. That's the one that I think I could see it being reversed come Saturday, but I personally have a hard time. I want to believe that the committee is going to put Alabama ahead based on what the total body work and how difficult they scheduled. It's just that would kind of go against some of the things that they did last year and how they seeded teams that did something very similar.
I mean, in all honesty, all things considered, Texas Tech would be an easy number one on this, where they are, or probably would have been on the previous line.
Right.
So that's the biggest nuance to me is I'm not going to ding them a whole lot because I haven't seen them play, but it's hard to know what they're going to do with that.
It is wild to just drill down on these 4 specific teams and see that 12-3 against quads 1 and 2 and only 3 total losses for Virginia. Damn it, Rocco, maybe I do really like Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, they've only been beat 3 times. It's a loud statement at this stage of the season, and the ACC is so much better than it used to be. Just 7-8 months ago, 10 months ago. So yeah, I think all that bodes well for the Cavs. Yeah, the Michigan State point was a good point, Anthony. Right now Gonzaga, and I'm sorry, we're not talking Gonzaga right now, but I'm stuck on that personally, the Gonzaga versus Spartans thing. They both played Kentucky neutral. They both blew out Kentucky neutral. Gonzaga much worse. And then Gonzaga's win at Santa Clara with their current team, no Huff, is better than any road win that Michigan State has. So that's fascinating to think about.
Yeah, one of the things that I've run up against recently, and maybe nobody else has, is I find it getting harder and harder now. Obviously, Alabama won it in 2 overtimes last night, but
they were even.
I find it interesting. Like if I were to decide that I was going to vote Alabama 1 or 2 on this list, then Arkansas would have to be in this group.
Yeah.
For me.
Well,
because
the problem is Arkansas.
I don't think there's 5 seed lines difference between Alabama and Arkansas.
I mean, it's yeah. Well, last night proved that, but that's one game.
I know.
A lot of data. Arkansas has been amazing at Bud Walton Arena this year for the most part, besides the Kentucky game, but they have not been the same on the road. And and last night could have changed that whole narrative. So it's just tough to give Arkansas the edge for losing.
No, I grant that. I'm just saying, like, to me, it's hard for me to have like a 5-line difference on my seed list between those 2 teams.
Yeah. It's a jumbled mess around here.
We have a tie between the teams that, I called out a while ago, Alabama and Texas Tech. Who's going to be 15? Who's going to be 16? Let's just hide them and compare them. Certainly
they both have the different levels of controversy, right? You got
right.
Betty Octo on one side, JT Toppin on the other.
Well, one's a controversy, one's a tragedy.
Right, but I think it's controversial when the committee dings for the injury thing, like personally. But
Yeah.
I will say Texas Tech has played like a national championship team at times this year. I don't think Alabama has ever played like a national championship team this year.
they played really good at Madison Square Garden. That was probably the most I've been impressed with them. That was an amazing game against St. John's. They were clearly the better team. But also at the time, we thought St. John's was potentially a top 10 game, top 10 team, which they haven't quite been there.
Didn't they give up 98 points in that game, if I'm remembering right?
Yeah, it was like 103-96.
They were very good on offense. I'll say that.
Well, Latrell
Well, that's Alabama.
Wrightsell had 4 steals in that game. That's what flipped the game. So as funny as the final score was, it was the defense that won the game. Somebody had to create margin, and it was finally them.
Let's see. We had
I mean, the fact that, this, we talked about this before, but if you're looking at splitting the difference there, I mean, if you take the injury question out of it,
Yeah.
Texas Tech has beat 2 teams on our one line, and potentially, if it depending on how the vote went, another one.
Yeah,
Nobody that we're talking about outside of that group has that. So, I mean, if Toppin, even if they lose that game the other night, with Toppin finishing the game, I think at worst case scenario, Tech's probably at 13, if not still at 12.
Yeah, they got punished a little bit in the strength of resume. Didn't they fall to 18 in that? Do I have that right?
definitely behind Alabama in API, SOR, and WAB.
I just think there's something to be said for
17.
the idea that Texas Tech has been a top team in our consciousness all season. If they're behind Alabama, to me, it's because of the injury concern with Toppin being out. It's not because of the resume, in my opinion. I think Texas Tech's just been too good too many times this year.
Well, and I think you got to also, I mean, Alabama's played a good schedule too, obviously, but Tech's schedule overall 4th in the country. I mean, that's considering Texas Tech used to have issues years ago of having horrible non-conference schedules. And they have remedied that. I mean, they have played 17 games against the top 2 quadrants. That's and 14 against Q1. That's a lot of Q1 games.
Yeah. Nobody played Houston twice.
Tech has wins against the top 2 or 2 of the top 3 teams in our bracket away from home. I think that's, again, it's only the injury. If we're going to put them at 16, my vote would be to put them at 15, but based on where we're at today, and
yeah,
Alabama's wins are good, but they're not that.
All right, let's put it to a vote. I'll be the tiebreaker regardless. I'll just go last. Matt, Alabama or Texas Tech?
Alabama.
Graham?
Red Raiders.
Jesus Christ. Rocco?
Alabama.
Dave?
Texas Tech.
Anthony? You get the deciding vote, really.
Texas Tech.
All right, Texas Tech it is at 15, Alabama at 16. And I put the 5 holdover teams, Arkansas, North Carolina, St. John's, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt, on the spreadsheet to be voted on, just so we can. Wait, what did I screw up here? Who did I lose? Virginia. No, Texas Tech.
No, you got it.
Yeah, I just forgot to type Alabama. I was like, there are only 15 teams here. Yeah, if we want to vote on these last 5, just to see how we do with the, the committee always mentions a couple of teams that were close. So we should probably rank these remaining 5 teams, and that will be our top 20. We kind of cut some corners and still took 2 hours, but it didn't take us 5 hours. So that's improvement.
Yes, it is.
I'll be interested to hear whether the committee mentions St. John's as a team that they're potentially considering there. If you want to look just at the basic numbers, there's a lot that you can argue for St. John's. But when it comes to the big wins, I'm not quite seeing it. But I think it will tell us a lot about the Big East in general if St. John's is viewed as just outside of a top 4 seed.
Yeah, I mean, certainly none of the metrics point towards it. 24th in the net, 19.3 average in both resume and predictive metrics. The WOB, they are what, 20th, somewhere in that range. Didn't do anything, and their best non-conference win was a neutral against Baylor. So if all they've done is kind of clean up against what we would all consider to be a not very good Big East, is that really enough for top 16? Yeah. I would say if Connecticut lands at 4, that probably means St. John's needs to be considered for sure. But if Connecticut is where we have them at 6, probably St. John's is more like in the 20 range. Just waiting on
Me.
Mr. Piece of Gold, the bracketeer.
All right, here we go.
Love it. We pretty much all have Vanderbilt at the top. So Vanderbilt is the team that we don't have in that we would be least surprised to see in there. And frankly, right, Vanderbilt's home win over Alabama is when everybody was like, oh, yeah, Vanderbilt might be for real. Never mind the fact that Aiden Sherrill didn't play that game. LeBaron Philon didn't play in the second half, and it was a home game for Vanderbilt. But that may well be the tiebreaker for the committee. Who freaking knows? Arkansas second on the list. And then St. John's and Tennessee are tied at 19 and 20. But I will just say St. John's and Tennessee. Unless anybody really wants to fight me on our 3rd and 4th teams out. All
While
right,
you're
boys.
doing that,
yeah,
sorry, I was going to say real fast before you go. If this was how the bracket were to go, the seating list would have to go. The bracketing would be very interesting because of how the top 3 lines shake out. Very interesting here. Have to break some principles.
We got to do it. Let me pull up I forgot about that key element of it. We got to actually bracket them. Jeez. All right, I got the distance chart here.
All right, I got to head out, guys. Have a good night. Thank you so much.
I also got to get the kiddos to bed.
All right.
Thanks,
guys.
It'll be the 4 of us figuring this last bit out.
Yeah, Kerry, I got a 10-minute warning. I just got a Missouri Valley podcast to join. They're on hold.
Damn.
I know. Arch Madness is as much as I love bracketology, there's nothing like Arch Madness.
That is accurate.
No, and with Northern Iowa fully healthy, it's going to be wouldn't surprise me to see them come out of there. I was on a radio show the other day, and somebody was asking me about that, and I said, well, my best guess would probably be like a 13, if they were to pull it off.
Yeah.
Just based on their net rate and everything else. But, I mean, depending if you had some other teams lose, they could sneak to the back of the 12 line.
Maybe. Or
they could even end up at the very top of the 14 line, but probably a 13 would be my best guess if you were going to have me.
Yeah.
Like, well, if they come back and win it, do you think where they'd be? And my guess probably somewhere on the 13 line would be my guess.
Yeah, because I think with the Tristan Smith injury, they lost like 6 in a row without him. And now he's back and they're crushing people. So if the committee takes that same philosophy of what you're bringing to the tournament, they're only going to give them more credit than the other way around. So they might even bump them up for a 12 because if they roll through Arch Madness and win it, they're probably beating Murray, Belmont. They're going to get at least a couple of those better teams.
And at that point too, their net, to be honest with you, if they do it like what you're talking about and pummel people, their net's going to be up there. Probably will end up on the 12 line.
They'll make up for where their shortcomings are.
I mean, and now of course, if like Stephen F. Austin wins out and Liberty wins out,
Stephen F. Austin has to play.
South Florida wins out. They could be at the back end of the 12 line, but
they would have to be. Stephen F. Austin
right.
has to play a road game for the championship if they play McNeese. So that's
you-
going to be
are
a
you
hot controversy. Just get ready for that.
Are you boys able to see the sheet I shared? Got the distance chart and seeds, brackets, regions, whatever, ready to roll?
Yes,
You know
sir.
what's interesting is, you'd mentioned you'd mentioned that they had
They want Philadelphia.
Michigan won Philly. I wondered if Michigan might want St. Louis if they were overall instead of going to Buffalo, because while it is a little bit further, is the trip easier going down Indiana and over to St. Louis as opposed to all the way, if you don't want to drive through Michigan, you lose a little bit of distance having to go down to Ohio and then all the way back.
Drive through
I'll
Canada,
prefer
but
Canada.
That's assuming everybody has a passport.
yeah,
You can't just
All right,
drive
well,
through Canada anymore without a passport.
you better go
Connecticut
get one.
gets to go east. Illinois and Purdue, they're fine either way. So Illinois would definitely prefer south. If anybody wants to
This is
jump
where
in on anything I'm
it-
doing, have at
this is
it.
where it gets interesting on the 3 line. This is where it gets very interesting.
Yeah, I usually color code mine so that I can see over here that I have like that whole thing and I change it, but I'm not doing it today. All right. I mean, Kansas by rule has to go here because the other
Right.
three have Big 12. Florida, they would prefer Houston,
Yep.
Yeah, they gotta go
but
south.
Nebraska.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing about
Oh, I see what you mean. Nebraska can't
See?
go anywhere.
Nebraska's got to go
Oh,
Midwest, and
what's going to happen is the
Nebraska,
principles
I
are going to
guess.
get broken, and so then it's going to
Yeah.
come to balancing the regions because you got too many Big 12 and Big 10 teams. There's no way
Yeah,
they
what
can,
is-
the first four can all be separated.
they said that there's like a new rule that if there are more than five, that they can start to break the rule earlier in
Yeah.
it. I don't.
Yeah.
Well, because the
So
other thing you're going to
Nebraska
have to start
probably
looking
would go
at,
here.
you're going to have to look at which teams, if they did, played each other twice and which ones didn't.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
Nebraska and Illinois only played once. Nebraska and Purdue.
No, they
only
played twice. Nebraska
right.
and Illinois played twice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so Nebraska couldn't go to Illinois' side there. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they would.
They could go to Purdue.
Yeah, and they could do Michigan too.
Yeah, they would prefer Midwest and then Florida.
And that's
Second
not as
type.
big a deal for Michigan because they're in the bottom half of the bracket. So
I think
Now
that
we've got
works.
True.
A
Now
seed-
we're settled a bit better.
a balance problem. I think we're going to have to put Virginia out here in the West just to get the numbers okay. Although the committee in the past has been like, they say they want it to be 5 or less, but then that one year in the reveal they
It's
had it
not hard.
six apart and they didn't care.
It's not written in stone, that's for sure.
Yeah, but Michigan State has to go there. Texas Tech and Alabama, I guess. Ooh, but that would be 2 SEC teams here, and I don't think that's allowed. So it would
No,
Well,
you have to
but
do
Texas
Alabama.
Tech.
Yeah, Bama in
Yeah.
the Midwest.
You have to do Alabama
Yeah.
in the Midwest.
Yeah.
Or move things around.
All right, let me see if this is balanced with my little calculator.
because I think what they'd probably
32 is good.
they probably in this situation,
Ooh,
my guess
30's
is they would
30's
they'd
bad.
bump Texas Tech if it worked, they'd bump Texas Tech to the east. That way they wouldn't be opposite Iowa State. They'd be opposite Duke and Iowa State and Kansas.
Yeah,
Texas Tech and Kansas wouldn't meet till a regional final anyway.
that's
But
true.
but the thing there, Dave, is Texas Tech plays Duke just as many times as Iowa State this season. They played Duke once and they played Iowa State once.
Yeah.
Unless they play in the Big 12 tournament.
It's,
then
it's
it
so
all
far,
changes.
right? Yeah.
That's the only way
Well-
that changes.
But that
But-
also gives you a better balance. I'm just
It goes
saying.
from 30 in the East to 32.
That's a good point.
I'm saying
That's a good
being a
point.
conference foe, I think. I mean, your point's 100% on, Rocco, but I just
But Duke played Michigan State as well already. So
yeah,
there you,
that's what I'm saying. If you put Michigan State to the south
Michigan State to the south.
and put Texas Tech in the east,
Well, then we would have no Big 10 teams in the East.
yeah, you need to have the Big Ten team by
Okay.
rule. But actually, you should have had Nebraska in the East because of that.
Hey, and Kerry, Nebraska's 11 and Florida's 10. That might not change a whole lot, but at least it's something on the C list.
Oops. Yes.
And you can't do
Nebraska
that
and
because Illinois and Nebraska played each other twice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right, what was
Nebraska
that?
needs to go East.
Nebraska should go east.
Yep.
All right, that helps balance things for sure.
And then
like,
Kansas.
You can see over my shoulder there.
But Kansas,
a-
I see what, yeah, I see what Matt was getting at because they both need to go East. Nebraska and Kansas, you can only take one or the other.
Yeah.
But
So,
when you
their
have
basic
Nebraska,
rule is going to
Michigan
be
in the
broken
Sweet
either
16.
way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you'd rather have Nebraska, Michigan playing in a regional final than Kansas and Houston in a Sweet 16, right?
Yeah.
What
Okay.
about
Think so.
Florida, Floria? What the fuck? And Kansas, and then we switch Alabama and Texas Tech. Not Texas. Texas isn't a 4 seed. Dear God.
How many games
That-
he had so far?
Alabama. Not enough. Never enough. Florida, Nebraska, yeah. And then Texas Tech is 15, Alabama 6. 176, dear God. Well, now this is a problem. 36 is okay.
Yeah, 32 to 36 works.
31 to 37, they've shown they're okay with that range. That's
Yeah, that's.
I guess that's okay. Do we have but we don't have a Big 12 team over here now. Shit.
Well, you know the reality.
Texas Tech.
Yeah, but the reality is, I wondered, like, I don't know that you're probably going to have to put Houston or something in the East. That's where when I messed around with mine for tomorrow, that's what I ended up with.
To move
Because-
UConn out of the East?
Well, here's the problem. If I got Iowa State as my 4, if Houston's my 5,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you can't put the 4 and the 5, and you can't put Houston. You can't put.
Oh yeah,
Houston
you can't
at
put the 1 and
opposite-
5 together.
You can't put the 1 and the 5 together.
That's
Oh.
I
That
forgot
means
about that.
Houston either has to go west, which they
East.
won't do with Arizona, so they end up east.
Good
We're
point.
starting over. I totally forgot about the 1 and 5 rule. Oh wow. All right. So UConn would prefer Midwest. Although, do we want to look ahead to see if UConn's okay in the Midwest? Well, they would have to go there because of the Big Ten.
Yep. And that's
All right.
why the order of Illinois and Purdue matters, right? Because somebody's going to go.
This is the shit that 75% of the people in the Matrix
It's
never
like
deal with.
I think Gonzaga
Right.
ended up for me in the South because just trying to make it work.
So now Kansas goes
Yep.
perfectly here. Nebraska would have to go here
Mm-hmm.
if I can type Nebraska. Florida, would
Florida,
go here. Gonzaga. All right, now we're just worried about balance, really. So we're gonna have to put a low seed out here. Do we have four Big Ten teams? Yeah, so we can throw Michigan State
Mhm.
here, even though they wouldn't prefer it by any means, but we got to get it below a 36. 14 is Virginia. They can't go here. Alabama can't go here. Probably Virginia here. At this point, we're just throwing away geography.
And
14's good. We would prefer the 16 here.
okay.
That balances.
Yep.
There we go. We did
Yeah.
it. Hey guys, good job. Thank you for calling me out on the 1 and 5 thing.
Well, I don't know
I've
that
run
because
into that so many
'cause I
times, too.
have Houston as 5 on my list, and I was like, okay, well they're gonna have to end up east.
All right. That's where we're at. Let's see what the committee decides on Saturday. All right. This was fun. Oh man. I don't know, guys. I've gone through stretches this season where I'm like, I don't know if I'm into it anymore. You guys brought me back. I love this. We got to figure out the timing for I think I mentioned this to Graham. Certainly, I didn't mention it to you guys, but I was talking about we need to put like a 20-minute clock, and each day everybody gets like 2 timeouts, and you get a challenge if you want to. We got to figure out how to tighten up the the whole the timing of it, but I think it was a fun conversation for sure.
Thanks for
Zyler
inviting me, guys. I
Buchanan.
appreciate it.
Yeah, Zyler Buchanan said Matt's been an excellent addition. I don't, is that your brother? What he loves
Yes,
you.
I slipped him a couple of $20 bills for that one. Yeah, thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
All right, well that'll wrap us up for tonight. This was fun. We'll be back at some point in the week before Selection Sunday to really dive into the whole thing, but I think we'll see what the committee tells us about how our top 16 compares to theirs. But thanks for joining us, sticking with us. It was a good chat. Take care.